Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, Bridgestone Arena. Predators tonight against the Boston Bruins. The Predators are 0-5, and they desperately need a win today. Barry Trotz at 5 o'clock, and I saw some people saying, in the YouTube chat yesterday, they were like, you better have the same smoke for the Predators you have for the Titans. Well, we'll see when we have Barry on the program. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Boy, I tell you, it's a depressing time to be a fan around here. It is a depressing time to be a fan. Whether it is, again, the Predators that are 0-5, or whether it is the Tennessee Titans that keyword might be the worst team in the NFL. It's tough. And you know what was especially tough? Who watched Derrick Henry last night? I did. Apparently, Derrick Henry is still the king. And because yesterday was on the free Monday night football game, as opposed to the one that you had to pay for, we all got to see it. This wasn't did you see what Derrick Henry did in the stat sheet? Because they also played a noon game that the Titans did, but we were all too busy watching the Titans lose to another backup quarterback. No. We all got to see it. Remember when everyone kept saying he doesn't have the breakaway runs anymore? He doesn't have it anymore. Jared, you have to admit, Derrick Henry doesn't have it anymore. Derrick Henry's on pace to break the NFL all-time single-season rushing record. He's on pace to have another 2,000-yard season, and he's doing exactly what he did in 2021 before he broke his foot. So now I got to ask this. Was it still a good idea to tell Derrick Henry you didn't want him anymore? That you were going in a different direction? That you didn't believe that he still had it in him? Was it a good idea? Is it still a good thing? Because some people said, is it still a good thing that Derrick can go win a ring? As if I care about the Baltimore Ravens winning the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, while Derrick Henry is chasing a ring, you're falling ever so quickly to the bottom of the league. Now, I wanted to keep Derrick Henry because I knew Derrick Henry was still good. Did you watch the last game he played? And I felt like the best thing for a young quarterback was to have the beast, the special human being, the machine of a running back who demands everybody's respect right next to him in the backfield. But Jared, he wouldn't run like this for the Titans. Are you sure? Because, I mean, we've seen Derrick Henry run like this for the Titans before. Well, he has Lamar Jackson. That's not fair. He did this with Ryan Tannehill. By the way, when he was running here, he had A.J. Brown as a number one receiver. Baltimore doesn't have A.J. Brown. Guess what? Derrick would be good here. Derrick would be good in Baltimore. Derrick would be good anywhere because he's Derrick Henry. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, we don't have the Ravens' offensive line. You know, the Ravens replaced their right guard and right tackle. Right tackle? They replaced their right guard and right tackle this offseason. You kept running it back with PT. By the way, you've got the offensive line guru coach. Their offensive line coach died. May he rest in peace. Tony Pollard is good. I'm not sitting here telling you that Tony Pollard's a bum or that the Titans didn't go get a running back or that Tony Pollard's fine. But he ain't Derrick Henry. And he's only making $1 million less than Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, and look, I wouldn't have even argued this before the season, but now that I'm watching him run the football, Derrick Henry's still in his prime. This is the same Derrick Henry. And in your great offseason in which Rand Carthon said, on offense, we checked every box from the number one starter to the furthest backup. You spent $230 million this offseason. On this offseason of putting this great team together, you let the best running back in the league go. for $1 million. Now, I didn't know he was still in his prime, but I still knew he was good. My question is, how did the Titans not know this? Again, you can get mad at me all you want. You can make up whatever you want to make up. You can make up the fact that, well, I mean, did Derrick want to be here? They told Derrick they didn't want him back. He said on Dan Patrick, yeah, they still didn't believe I could run that way. So again, how did the Titans not know that the best player on their team, Derrick Henry, who again is now a first ballot Hall of Famer, who is the best running back in the NFL, who is number one in virtually every single statistical category, how did they not know that he was still this great player? And the answer is the same reason why Nicholas Pete Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
is still at right tackle. Because they're incompetent. That's why. The only reasonable excuse they'd have to move on from Derrick Henry would be if they had said, well, look, we got a young quarterback and we're 3 drafts away and so we don't think we can compete this year. That's the only reasonable excuse. But that's the opposite of what their words and their actions said. Rebuilding teams don't trade third-round picks. You did. Do rebuilding teams spend $25 million a year on a 29-year-old receiver? You weren't rebuilding. In fact, the Rand Club got all mad at us, Ian and I, before the season when we said, hey, this team's going to stink. And they got mad at us. You'll eat those words, Jared. Where's Chef Rand, by the way, in the YouTube chat? This is just example 800 of how this group running the team doesn't have a clue. None. The worst player on the team, Malik Willis, went somewhere else and played exponentially better. The best player on the team, Derrick Henry, went somewhere else and is playing exponentially better. You guys don't have a problem with this. It's amazing. And again, I know that the biggest rival to the Titans as far as the Adams family is concerned, I know it's the Houston Texans. If you want to go old school with the whole franchise, with the Oilers/Titans, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you're somebody like me and you became a Titan on day one at the old Adelphia Coliseum against the Cincinnati Bengals when they won by 1 point, the team you hate the most is the Baltimore Ravens. Period. They stole your Super Bowl and crushed your dream season. They stomped on your logo. They beat you another time as a number 1 seed. They had Ray Lewis, and they paraded him around when everybody knew what was going on. And now Derrick Henry, the best player to ever play for the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry may go break Eric Dickerson's record in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. How much worse can it get? Just a serious question. How much worse can it get? Can you, I guess you could lose to New England. I guess you could get housed by New England in a couple of weeks. But outside of that, you're terrible. It's October, and we know the season is going nowhere. Every week, your team gets worse and worse. Every week, the players that you've moved on from, whether, again, it's a superstar like Derrick Henry or a Scarbini like Elijah Molden, whose 2 interceptions with the Chargers would lead your football team right now, it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. So again, I ask you guys this. Give me an explanation that justifies the Titans not wanting to bring Derrick Henry back that doesn't highlight their own incompetence. You can't say he's not that good anymore, can you? Because we saw Derrick Henry yesterday on Monday Night Football. I hear people saying that their offensive line isn't as good as the Ravens. You mean the offensive line that the Titans chose to ignore right tackle on? Every single element of this Derrick Henry situation highlights the fact that your organization, the people calling the shots right now, not just the people that used to call the shots, but the people calling the shots right now, don't have a clue. And it's not going to change until they change. In the meanwhile, we can just sit down and all enjoy watching Derrick Henry be Derrick Henry for your most hated rival. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to weigh in, we're starting on Derrick Henry the King, 615-737-1025. And I hear the pushback to this sometimes. Derrick Henry didn't want to be a Titan anymore. Sounds great. Except it's not true. And we have the proof. That's next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Lamar Jackson's had a perfect passer rating and has been lighting up the scoreboard. Here's Henry, left side. Yep, it can change in a play. There he goes. McCollum, the only man that can catch him, and he does.
Well, the outside zone, and you get him on a rail, and it's overplayed there at the line of scrimmage, and as soon as you give him a crease, he is gone. For his size, and, you know, it's almost unfair. Once he gets on the edge in space, he's just hard to catch.
Toss to Henry, bends it back. Here he goes again. Jets are on. Did he stay in? No, he stepped out. Here is Henry on the reception for the touchdown.
There you go. Derrick Henry on Monday Night Football last night with the Baltimore Ravens. Troy Aikman saying, I mean, you get him going, and it is unfair. I remember when it was unfair for you. Now what's unfair is how bad your team stinks. And that's, again, you played the better quarterback on Sunday, and you lost by 24 points. To a team, by the way, that Derrick Henry single-handedly beat with 199 yards. And you let him go. So people will say, Derrick Henry didn't want to be a Titan. In fact, that's what somebody in the text line just said right there. They said, one text said, Derrick Henry didn't want to come back. Well, I mean, that sounds nice, but that's not exactly what happened. In fact, if you go back to the day that Mike Vrabel got fired, so the day that was a Monday, that there was a Vrabel press conference that never happened, and then on Tuesday, all of a sudden, in the middle of the day, it was announced Mike Vrabel was fired. Ran Carthon held the infamous ball did not bounce our way press conference. And in that ball didn't bounce our way press conference, item about number 800 as far as things that people were thinking about at the time was, what about Derrick Henry's future with the Titans? Here's what Ran Carthon said that day.
Derrick kind of approached Sunday as if it was his last game here. Is there a scenario where you maybe try to pursue him, or does that depend on maybe who the new head coach is?
Yeah, well? that'll be a new head coach. The new head coach and I, having a conversation. I had a really good conversation with Derrick yesterday, on the way out, and we had our conversation, which I'll keep between he and I. But the doors never close.
Okay, so he said right then and there, hey, Derrick and I had a conversation. I'm going to keep that between us, but doors never close. It reminds me of when before the draft, when they took Will Levis, Ran Carthon was asked about Ryan Tannehill by me. And he said, Ryan and I have had a conversation, and it stays between Ryan and I. Tannehill was asked about it after the draft. Tannehill was like, yeah, I mean, we had a conversation, but you can take that however you want to take it, which was Tannehill didn't take it too seriously. So again, Ran Carthon saying, hey, Derrick and I had a conversation. It stays between us, but he knows where he stands. That same day, Derrick Henry did an interview with Bussin' with the Boys. And he was asked about whether or not he was possibly going to close the door on being a Tennessee Titan. Here's what Derrick said the day after that secret conversation with Ran Carthon.
When you say stuff like that, it seems like the door to the Titans is closed. And that's not a bad thing if it is.
No,
like
I'm not saying it like it's closed, but I just feel like I said earlier, I feel like they're going in a different direction. And I feel like today definitely solidified that, and that's okay. That happens. That's the nature of the business. We want something to last for forever. Nothing does, especially in this business. I'll always be a Titan, even if I don't come back. But at the end of the day, I want to win the Super Bowl, and wherever that is, that gives me the best chance, and that's what I want to do.
Okay.
Like, it ain't, I don't, have no bad blood or feel no type of way if I'm not back. It's just, what was supposed to happen. The story already written. We all just living it.
Derrick Henry. And people will say he said he wanted to go win a Super Bowl, and he wanted, yes, after he said they've already decided they're going in a different direction. He and Rand had that secret conversation that will stay between us. And Derrick Henry's like, they're going in a different direction. So you know what? And again, this is just typical Derrick, right? Again, the guy was the star player of this team for 8 years, and he never caused one controversy, never said the wrong thing, was backing up DeMarco Murray, and he could have said, I hate it here, I want to trade, never. He got benched for Dion Lewis and David Fluellen, and he never said anything. Derrick Henry, the consummate pro, knows he's not wanted back, and he's already turned it to, well, hey, it's okay. It's how this business works. They've made up their mind. They're going in a different direction. And so I'm going to go somewhere to go win the Super Bowl. And let's not forget, it was reported that the Titans tried to trade Derrick Henry. In fact, Rand Carthon tried to trade Derrick Henry, as the report states. Rand has denied the report, but again, Rand's said a lot of things since he's been the general manager. But they tried to trade him, and ownership said no. Also, 2 weeks ago, Derrick Henry was on Dan Patrick, and he was asked about the idea of what he was capable of after leaving Tennessee. And Derrick again made sure, just to let you know, they chose to go in a different direction. They didn't believe.
But do you think people doubted you after you left Tennessee? And did you still have, that get up and go? Could you still, be an elite running back?
Yeah, I think it was doubt everywhere. I mean, I think it was doubt there that they didn't think I was where I used to be. But I knew that, I still had plenty left. And, when that next opportunity came as far as free agency, I was going to be ready to showcase that I can still go.
Again, Derrick Henry's telling you, they didn't believe. But, hey, I knew I could, and so I'm glad I'm somewhere where I want to be. Also, for everybody out there of the Derrick Henry didn't want to come back here crew, the Titans have this secret thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called the franchise tag. And even though they would have had to use it at 120%, so you would have had to pay Derrick Henry around $12 million, even though it would have been at 120% of the original tag, they could have used that to leverage Derrick Henry into a new contract like they did the last time. But they wanted to go in a different direction. They wanted backs they could throw the ball to. They wanted this new high-flying, they wanted this brand new tight pants latte offense. Forgetting the fact that Arthur Smith runs the tight pants latte offense, and Derrick Henry's pretty good in it. They made this choice. Don't tell me that Derrick didn't want to come back. Derrick wasn't wanted back. And in the nicest, slightest Derrick Henry way possible, he told you that. He told you that on Bussin' with the Boys. He told you that on Dan Patrick. Again, the Titans reportedly tried to trade him. The Ravens went on the record with the Athletic, said we had a deal in place, and the Titans owner shot it down. Don't tell me they couldn't have had Derrick Henry back. They chose not to. They chose to be this bad. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025. Here on the program, Edward has been waiting patiently and is going to kick us off today. Edward, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, I find your show very entertaining. I've been over in North Carolina. I went over here to do an Ironman. I try to pick up sports talk on the way back. I thought this might add to your talk. One of the sports talk radio stations coming out of Salem, Winston-Salem, the guy said, wasn't Rand Carthon a running back in the NFL? How could he let him go? And, they were talking in very negative terms about ownership and management on this sports talk radio that I was listening to in North Carolina. And I feel like you do. How did that happen? Why did we let that happen?
I'm telling you the answer. They didn't think he still had it. Edward, thank you. They didn't think he still had it. That's what this is about. They thought Tony Pollard was better for what they wanted to do and what they thought Henry was still capable of. That's what they thought. And look, Tony Pollard is no bum. Don't confuse this with the fact that I'm saying, hey, Derrick Henry's the best, and they let him go, and he's a leader, and he's the face of the franchise, and he's the identity of the team. And don't confuse that with me with thinking that I'm saying Tony Pollard stinks, because I'm not saying Tony Pollard stinks, because Tony Pollard doesn't stink. But again, in reality, they didn't think he had it anymore. And part of that is on them for having such a bad offensive line last year with Dillard and Brewer and PT and Scarbini and whoever else, the 11th pick in the draft, that proved that, hey, Derrick's really not that good anymore. Huh? Is Derrick really not that good, or are the guys in front of him not that good? One texter says, Henry couldn't run behind this Titans offensive line anyways, which again is kind of another justification for why it's okay that Derrick Henry's gone to Baltimore and has become not just the same Derrick Henry, but the King Derrick Henry. Your Derrick Henry is now in Baltimore. And you'll say, well, I mean, he couldn't run behind this crap offensive line anyways. You do know that teams can get better on the offensive line. The teams can improve. Brian Callahan did a Titans podcast interview yesterday where he was asked about right tackle and was basically like, yeah, it's just not good enough. No crap. So what's his solution? Ian, can we get that cut with Brian Callahan on the Titans podcast? Because I literally laughed my ass off at this. Again, this is the most sunshine and rosy, team-friendly interview you can do. And he's asked about what the options at right tackle are. And first tells us, well, we're going to try a guy who's not even technically on the team right now. And we're going to try a guy that we benched last week. And but the reason that we're doing this is because right tackle play isn't good enough, as if we're stupid and don't understand that.
Coach, let's talk about the right tackle position. Jalen Duncan started in Buffalo, then gets injured in the first series of the game. You've made it pretty clear that he will not be playing in Detroit. So what do you do at that position? Do you open that up to competition this week?
That's where we're headed right now. Between John Ajoku and Leroy. Again, we're not getting a level of play that's sustainable there. There's too much. Too many hits on the quarterback, too many soft pockets, too many things that aren't at the level that they need to be. So I'm clear, like there's tackles lose pass rush reps. It happens. JC lost one. It was critical. It ended up being a sack fumble that we recovered, but it crushed a potential explosive play. Tackles get beat, but it's just the frequency and the intensity at which we get beat sometimes that we have to be better. And there's really no way around it. I can't sit here and sugarcoat that any other way. It's just, we're not playing at a level that's good enough at that spot.
No duh. So what are we going to do at right tackle, Coach? Now that the guy who stinks is hurt and the guy who you keep playing, who you thought didn't stink but does stink, is clearly terrible. What are you going to do? Well, we're going to try to battle it out between a guy that we think stinks so bad that we cut him and another guy who we think stinks so bad that we didn't play him this past week. And we're going to see if he's any better. But I just want everybody to understand why we're doing this. We're not blocking well enough at right tackle. No duh. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. 615-737-1025. More of your phones on this. The King running his way. And we'll take your calls as well. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Hey, Preds fans, do not miss this Wednesday night Smashville live show at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. See your Predators star players up close and personal. This week's guests, Mark Delgazzo and Zachary LaRue, who, by the way, congratulations to him making his NHL debut tonight. That's Wednesday night at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue and on your home for the Nashville Predators, 1025 The Game.
What guys in offensive leadership when you're talking about that?
I mean, I'm not going to single anybody out, but it's a collective group. I'd say it's just like for me, like I focus on the tight ends. I start with us. There's a lot of guys in the O-line room that a lot of leadership in that room as well. I'm not going to single anybody out and say who's a leader because I think there's a lot of guys that lead in their own ways. But I just think we got to be more vocal about it. That's all.
Why not? I mean, shouldn't the main leaders of the offense be obvious?
I mean, you don't always have to be. You don't have to be, obvious to be a leader. You can lead by example. You can be a vocal guy. It just leadership looks different in different ways. And some guys are vocal. Some guys rather just, keep their mouth shut and do the work. But either way, we just got to enhance that. That's all I'm trying to say.
That was Nick Vanett yesterday. The Titans make 2 players available on Mondays, an offensive player and a defensive player. Lloyd Cushenberry has been their kind of go-to guy to put lipstick on the pig after a loss. Well, they did him last week, so they had to find somebody else this week, so they went with Nick Vanett, who, again, asked about leadership, is like, well, I don't want to single any leaders out, but we can all lead in our own ways. Everybody's a leader. Well, you're not going to say who the leaders are? Oh, well, no. I mean, everybody can lead. Hey, Ian, who was the leader on the team last year?
There's a couple, I guess.
Who was the main one?
Maybe Henry.
Derrick Henry. So, again, the Titans, they know what they're doing. And
maybe a little Tannehill.
Tannehill and Henry. But, again, like, you didn't have to ask. So, who are the leaders on the team right now? Everybody, leads in their own way. But back to your phones on the text line again. I just can't. This Derrick Henry is just crushing it for the Ravens, and everyone just, wow, good for him. Good for him. A.J. Brown crushed it with the Eagles, and everyone's okay with firing a winning general manager in the middle of the season. It's unbelievable. Just not the same standards. One texter says, you would be banging the table for the Titans to trade Derrick Henry if he was still on the team. Let me say this. Number one, you are not the decision maker as to what my feelings would be. Number two, I can't tell you what my feelings would be if Derrick Henry was still on this team, because my gut tells me if Derrick Henry was still on this team, they wouldn't be 1-5. Because, again, Derrick Henry's the best player at his position in the league, makes it the life of a young quarterback infinitely easier, and is a leader, something this team is clearly lacking. Number three, I was the one that was begging them to not trade him last year when they reportedly tried, and was begging them to re-sign him. So instead of deciding what I would do, I'm just going to tell you what I have done in the past, because I don't know how I would feel. But I know in the past, I was in favor of keeping Derrick Henry over and over and over again. So don't put this on me. One texter into the text line says, you are so right. I think Rand Carthon wanted to bring in his own players and build his team and get rid of Robinson's players that were left and were part of the winning teams that they had. You do not let Derrick Henry go. He was this franchise. So far in his tenure, Rand Carthon has burned more than he has cooked. And I think Rand letting Derrick Henry go is John Robinson's A.J. Brown trade. Now, that's a lot. But let me just say this. I do think there's a lot of MGS going on when it comes to why Derrick Henry's not on this team. Ian, are you familiar with MGS?
Is that the my guy syndrome?
My guy syndrome. My guy, my team, my coach, my offense, my leader. And again, if Carthon and Brinker were the first, if that is in fact what has infected them, they wouldn't be the first. In fact, it happens far too often in the NFL. My guy syndrome. I get somewhere and I want my quarterback. So I'm Josh McDaniels. I'm going to get rid of Derek Carr. And look, Derek Carr stinks, but he's not that. And I'm going to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo because he's my guy. I think there's a lot of that. I also love the fact, freaking love it, that I was listening to the Midday Show, which I think they need to rename the Rand Club with Derek and Willie, with Adam just facilitating it. But listening to the show, and they're talking about you can't blame the current administration for why the Titans stink so bad. And they're like, it's the drafts in 2020, 2021, and 2022 that are catching up to them. The Washington Commanders drafted Chase Young with the number 2 pick in 2020. He's not on their team anymore. They drafted Jamin Davis in the first round in 2021. He's on their team. He's a backup and has changed positions. They drafted Jahan Dodson, one pick before the Titans drafted Treylon Burks. He's not on their team anymore. So they missed in 2020, 21, and 22. Why does Washington not need excuses to suck? Why is everything there not Ron Rivera's fault? Why are they good? For every little argument, there's a, yeah, but somebody else is doing it smarter than you. And it is what it is. And again, I mean, the coach, I think the coach is kind of more of a bystander than he is a co-conspirator, but I mean, he hadn't done a whole lot either, and he's part of the my guy syndrome. One texter says, Leroy Watson couldn't play last week in Buffalo, even though he played better than the other two bums the week before, and now they want to try him out again. Do they realize they aren't ever going to get better until they get better players? Even if that guy is on another team's practice squad, please go get somebody else. Agreed. That's the thing that I keep laughing about. Last year, the Titans benched Andre Dillard and put in Jalen Duncan, even though Jalen Duncan was terrible. And the only reason they did that was because Mike Vrabel could not watch Andre Dillard play anymore. And then after about 5 weeks of watching Jalen Duncan play, they went back to Andre Dillard. You know why? Because they couldn't watch Jalen Duncan play anymore because he sucked too. Now the Titans start off at right tackle with Nicholas Petit-Frere. PT. Where did he go?
PT. Sorry.
Thank you. They had PT at right tackle. He sucked so bad they couldn't watch it anymore, so they put in Leroy Watson. Well, they thought he sucked, so now they put in Duncan. Well, he sucks, so he got hurt, but he sucks anyways. So they put in PT. He sucks, so now they're going to put in a Ojukwu who they already cut. They just swap and spit. That's all you're doing. At some point, you got to try somebody else on somebody else's team. And what happened to Bill Callahan will fix it? So many people are telling me that the Titans' offensive line's so bad it doesn't matter if you kept Derrick Henry. Did we just assume the line was going to suck this year? I did, because they didn't have a right tackle. But you all kept telling me, Bill Callahan. So come on now. It's unbelievable. One texter says, you think Henry wanted to stay with the Titans in this mediocre offensive line? Again, what happened to Bill Callahan? What happened to all the money and they're going to fix the line? And what happened to that? I think Derrick Henry would have been open to it if the Titans had treated him the way he felt like he deserved to be treated, both financially and from a value to the team standpoint. If they had gone to him, instead of going to him last year and saying, hey, we're about to trade you to the Ravens for a 4th-round pick. If they had gone to him and they had said, you are this franchise, and we want to build this thing up around you, I think he would have had a different opinion. Plus, at the end of the day, it wasn't his call. The Titans have the franchise tag. The franchise tag will never go away. The players hate the franchise tag, and it will never, ever, ever go away. And the reason it won't go away is because if the players went to the owners in a negotiation and said, we want the franchise tag, we want to get rid of the franchise tag, we want to negotiate, they'd say no. They'd say no, you can go on strike. Because teams like Cincinnati don't want it being held over their head by Joe Burrow that the guy could leave as a free agent. If these players had choices without that tag, Lamar Jackson wouldn't be a Raven. And they don't want that. So you had a choice. Sorry, you made it. And now he's going to go break Eric Dickerson's record because he's that good. And it kind of is what it is at this point. Wes is up next on the program. Wes, thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Wes.
All right, Jared, I hear a lot of comparisons about Wren and John Robinson, so I've got to ask the professional because I'm very clueless. I don't know. What is it specifically that Wren does better than John Robinson?
Probably is nicer to Amy. Which, by the way, he's nicer to Amy.
Okay.
But let me say this, Wes, thank you for your call. That's not nothing, okay? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that, well, you know, Amy should have been okay with, she's the owner. And so that is not by any stretch of the imagination. That's not something where I'm going to say like, hey, Robinson should have had a better relationship with the owner. He should have. Simple as that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 on the program. I really do want to get into the Vols, but I do feel like we'll get into the Vols. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, there's a lot of people that think that I'm some big hypocrite and that I am going to, on this program, that I am going to do something that I wouldn't do to the Titans for the Predators. We'll touch on that next. Tune into 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville tomorrow night for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on Jacksonville State on the road. Pregame at 5 o'clock. Kickoff is at 6:30. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV.
you're chasing expectations and not chasing your own game. Meaning, you're not, the process of having fun and the joy that comes in is the work you put in and the process of getting at it every day. And I don't think we've lost that. I think we've frustration is a scary emotion, and it's not a great emotion. And I think if you look at yourself, I know I look at myself individually. When I'm frustrated, I'm not a very good person. I'm not a very good teammate, and I think that's kind of creeped in a little bit. And again, it's chasing the expectations that we have for ourselves, and we're skipping the process of a little bit of the work.
That was Andrew Brunett today. Predators taking on the Bruins right here. 7:45 tonight?
Yep.
That's late.
Every team is playing tonight. It's one of those, I think they call it what? NHL Frenzy Night, where every team in the league is playing. So I think they're trying to stagger lots different start times.
So there were a lot of people that have said over the last week or so, because Predators have been not good for about a week and a half. And there have been a lot of people that said, you get on the Titans, but you won't get on the Predators. And I'm like, that's an interesting story. I guess you forget when John Hines was the coach. But again, that's an interesting story, fits a narrative, make me the mean radio guy. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, Barry Trotz coming on our show at 5 o'clock. And I've heard too, if Rand Carthon went on your show the way Barry Trotz does, you'd suck up to him. I doubt it. Can't tell you for certain because it hadn't happened, so I don't know. We had Rand the day he got hired. I actually kind of liked him. And then I started seeing that he wasn't really doing typical GM things, and I had a problem with that. But Barry Trotz is going to sit down here at 5 o'clock, and if you think all of a sudden we're going to say things like, Coach, it's a good thing that you guys have started off 0-5. You are mistaken. I am concerned. Now, I'm not super panicked that all of a sudden, like this season where we expected the Predators to compete, means that by May they won't be any good. But I did see Adam Vingan's stats that said since 1995, nobody's made the playoffs starting 0-5, and I don't like it. And I do know the fact, and again, the big question I have for Barry Trotz is this. If you actually do stink, which I don't think they do, but they might. If you guys actually do stink, then what do you do? Because Saros is locked up and Yossi is locked up and Forsberg is locked up and those guys have no moves, so you can't do anything about that. And Stamkos is not going anywhere and Marchessault's not going anywhere and Brady Shea's probably not going anywhere. So what do you do? I mean, I guess you could fire the coach and see if that changes things. But you're kind of married to this team right now. So again, I'm not super panicked about the Predators. Like I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I think the problem is they lost that second game against Detroit. And ever since then, it's been like this giant cloud over their head of like, oh crap, we've got to win a game. And then as soon as something bad happens, they start gripping the sticks too tight and everybody starts to turtle up. And that team last year after the U2 concert thing that didn't give a rat's ass. Sell us all, trade us all, I don't care, whatever. That team doesn't. They got to get back to that. But again, I mean, if you think that I'm not worried at all about the Predators, that I thought that they'd be 0-5. I actually thought they were going to start off good this year. I thought they were going to get hot to begin the season, and we'd be saying, oh my God, they're so good. And I'd be like, guys, it's October. Well, it's the opposite. But if you think we're going to play favorites or whatever it may be, you've got the wrong show. We don't do that. So tune in at 5 o'clock. The other thing I should note today is that the game is on FanDuel Sports Network. Let me just say, it's the exact same as Bally Sports. It's the same channel. It's the same app. It's the same streaming service. It's the same, it's all the same. The thing that I find fascinating about this, and again, nothing's changing. The PR guy, Ben Blevins, who sends out releases about, 74 Predators games on Bally Sports Southeast this year, was Ben Blevins, and it was an email at Bally Sports. Now it's an email at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com. It's all same people, same broadcasters. It's just different logos. Hopefully they get rid of that god-awful Bally's music that if I never hear it again, I'll be okay. But it's kind of the same. What I find fascinating is that there is no justifiable reason for this network to still exist based off of what I know. I am not some super rich guy that understands everything about money. I mean, I know how to earn some of it, but other than that, again, like the super rich, I'm not one of these guys. But what I've learned with this stuff is that these bankruptcy judges, they have a lot of power. And it's basically like, well, do you want our network that's you've already paid a bunch of money to be an investor in? Do you want to own the network? You're never going to make your money back. You're certainly not going to be able to sell the network at the value that you bought it for. Do you want it or do you want zero? And it's kind of odd how these companies operate. Like it's kind of shocking to me. And it's kind of an eye-opener about how bankruptcy works, I guess. 615-737-1025 is our phone number on our program. Coming up next, yesterday, I spent a long time talking about how bad the Titans are. And I spent a lot of time explaining, if you guys didn't listen during the summer, that, well, I hate to say it, but I was right. I was right about the team. I was right about the right tackle. I was right about the hierarchy of the organization. I was right about the offseason moves. I was right about all of it. And quite frankly, a lot of people that wanted to believe this was going to be a good team were wrong. So now, how do the Titans get themselves out of this mess? That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, Bridgestone Arena, where the Predators host the Boston Bruins tonight at 7:45, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So yesterday, I think, was kind of a moment where even the strongest, not the strongest, even some of the stronger ardent Titan believers, the think positive people, even they're starting to think, man, Jared was right about a lot of things with this team. In fact, somebody called in yesterday and said, I turned your show off because I kept hearing you talk about right tackle, and I was tired about hearing about how we weren't going to be any good this year, and I watched a game on Sunday, and I thought, man, those guys were right. Ian might be the rightest in the clubhouse. He's the one who set his expectations at 4 wins this year. So since we were right, and again, we're not always right. I thought the Predators were going to get swept by the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round of the 2017 playoffs, and they ended up in the Stanley Cup final. So I'm not always right. But I am right about this. I was right about right tackle. I was right about the offseason spending spree. I was right about the guard that they drafted in the first round last year. I was right about the fact that, they're struggling a lot in training camp. It's just practice, Jared. No, I was right. And I was right about the front office. So since I was right, can I maybe just maybe give you the answers of how to get out of this? And I'm not certain I'm right about anything, but I feel like I'm better equipped to break this down than the Let Rand Cook crew. So I'm going to tell you what they have to do. And it's not going to be fun for them. But again, making major changes to turn around your fortunes in anything is very rarely fun at the beginning. It's not fun when you decide to go on a diet and lose weight. It's not fun to get rid of all the junk food. It's not fun to go to a party where there are cakes and cookies and chips and sodas and drinks and everything else and say, nah, I'm good with the broccoli. It becomes fun once you start getting on the scale and you start losing weight. It becomes fun. Same with winning. It becomes fun once you start doing it. So step one, if you want to be good, you're not going to be good this year. We know it. But if you want to become good again, number one, embrace the tank. This team sucks, and they'll be 1-6 this time next week. The battle with New England in a couple of weeks is a biggie. Go Patriots. I hate to say it, but you need to be bad. You need to get the number 1 pick in this year's draft. And you need to get the number 1 pick in this year's draft because the number 1 pick gives you options. If there were an elite franchise quarterback out there, you get to pick him. And before we say there's not an elite franchise quarterback out there, remember, everybody thought during the 2019 draft, going into it the year before, everybody thought 2020 draft, the 2019 season, everybody thought Tua was that guy. Then all of a sudden, Joe Burrow got hot. So it could happen. If there's not a quarterback there, there might be a transcendent, game-changing player at another position. 2022 did not have a good quarterback class. Detroit got Aiden Hutchinson. And 3, it gives you the option of trading down, which we've seen in the past you've taken advantage of. So this team needs the number 1 pick. I'm not going to tell people, I wouldn't go in the locker room and say, boys, lose on purpose, because I don't do that. But we just have to hope that New England comes in here and beats them. And again, it's not fun, but they need the number 1 pick. Number 2, at the end of the season, everybody in the football department goes. Brinker, Carthon, the AI cancer model, everybody. Now, granted, you can't fire all your scouts and your assistant GMs and things like that because you do need people to work the draft for the next guy. But the decision makers, the ones that have kept making the team worse, the ones that don't believe in right tackle, they've got to go. Every single one of them. And I don't care how fair it is or unfair, both the NFL and life are not fair. But it is a fact that they took over a 7-win team, turned it into a 6-win team with the best running back in the NFL, and right now they're on pace for 3 wins. They ain't cooking. It's time to move on. I don't care if it's not fair. It is reality. What does the NFL stand for? Not for long. You don't get 8 years to prove whether or not you're any good. So at the end of the year, they're gone. The suits on the other side of the building, the business end of it, Burke Nihill, Adolfo Birch, stay out of football. Stay over there on the business side of this and get out of football because you don't know football. Don't pretend that you know football. You don't know football. I hate to say it, but again, it's the truth. And then open up a search for a GM. Let's stop with all this, collective name titling and whatever. GM. And the GM oversees the football operation of the Tennessee Titans and reports to Amy Adams Strunk, period. And only candidates with prior GM experience will be considered. And you would say, well, hold on. What if there's some really great GM? Adam Peters with Washington was not a GM before he got that job, and he's done a great job so far. And I get that. But here's why I'm going with experience. Because I know nobody in that building knows football. Just like I don't know football. Like I know how to talk football on the radio. But do I know football the way these guys that do this for a living that are supposed to be, do they know? There's no way that you know football the way a true, legit executive knows football. Watch a show like Inside the NFL when they put these former players around Bill Belichick, and he just laughs at him. He's like, okay. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I don't know football. Pat McAfee doesn't know football. The people who know football, watch Nick Saban on game day. Those guys are all sitting there, and he's outlining everything because he knows football. So you need to get a guy who knows football and has experience running an organization. It doesn't even have to be great experience. It just has to be experience because those guys learn from their mistakes. Whoever has the best plan of all the different people you interview gets the job, period. And if it was me, I'd be looking to know, Rick Spielman, why didn't it work out in Minnesota? Like, what's your biggest regret in Minnesota? Mark Dominic had a terrible record in Tampa Bay. I think Mark Dominic's a pretty smart football guy. Why didn't it work out in Tampa Bay? Take me through where you felt like you messed up and where you do better in a second shot. Even a guy like Pete Carroll, I would consider Pete Carroll to come in here and run the football operation. Again, I want somebody with experience that can be the head of the organization, report directly to Amy, not be afraid to do press conferences, not say things like the ball didn't bounce their way, and would be able to run this operation who knows football. And then that person gets to decide what you do with Brian Callahan, and that person gets to decide what you do with the first pick, and that person gets to decide what you do with whatever free agent money you'll have. Step 3, the owner then gets on the plane and goes back to Texas and lets the guy who is running the team do his or her job. If it's Pete Carroll, we're very excited to have Pete Carroll run our football operation. If it's Rick Spielman, if it's Mark Dominic, if it's trying to think off the top of my head some of these guys that have done this stuff before, if it's one of those guys, we're very, very excited to be turning this over right now to Rick Spielman, former NFL general manager. You're running the team. Get on the plane, go to Texas, and let him do his job. Now, I don't think they'll do this because I think they have too much pride, and 2, there are too many people on the payroll that don't work, and they probably don't want to add to that, paying Robinson, paying Vrabel, and having to pay these guys, and having to pay if the new coach doesn't want Brian Callahan, having to pay him. I'm sure they don't want that. But the decisions that got you in this mess of why you're paying all these people, those are your decisions, not mine. I told you, I wouldn't have fired Robinson when they did. So I wouldn't be responsible for making that decision. Well, Amy can do whatever she wants. She fired a general manager who wins 61% of his games when they were in first place in the middle of the season. But I'm just telling you what you have to do in order to get good. Unless you want to keep sitting on the couch and watching games like last Sunday, this is what you have to do. You may not want to do it. You may not think it's fair. But again, I don't care about what's fair. Life's not fair. I care about what the Titans have to do. And if she continues to not do this, if she continues to do it her way, then there is absolutely no chance that this team will be any good by the time that new stadium opens. And they'll still make their money. Again, it's not about making money. They'll make their money no matter what. Tepper in Carolina will make his money. But what's going to happen in that new stadium is every time somebody with a hint of a fan base comes in here, it will be 95% Raider fans, 95% Cowboy fans, 95% Packer fans, 95% Steeler fans. Is that how you want to open up a new stadium? And I will tell you about the plan I just laid out in front of you. I am as sure of that as I was that PT couldn't play right tackle. And you know how sure I was about that. You get two choices. Get better or get bitter. You can get mad at the mean radio guy, or you can say, you know what? Doing it our way hasn't worked. But you pick. How many more seasons do you want to waste? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Now, a lot of people will hear the Callahan angle of this, and they'll say, oh, no, Jared Callahan hasn't had it. Doesn't change what the Titans have to do, which I'll get to next. Stillman and Company, 1025 again.
Comparing the first 6 games of your team here to the first 6 games of the 2019 Bengals, all of the efficiency and production metrics are darn near identical. What do you remember about that experience, that start? What do you maybe draw from that? And is that something that you look at as trusting the process long term?
Yes, to answer the last part of that question, yes. That's sort of what I meant earlier when I was talking through, you go through these types of seasons and starts of seasons and, year one, every year one I've been a part of has been hard. Year one in Cincinnati was hard. Year one in Oakland with John Gruden was hard. I was in year 2 with Josh McDaniels. I went to year 1 with John Fox. That was hard. Like, year 1 is hard. There's a lot of things that you're trying to work through. There's a lot of things you're trying to get on the same page. You're trying to build your program the way you want it. And there's always going to be difficulty. And having gone through those experiences gives me the hope that 1, I can handle it, and 2, I've seen it before, so I have at least some roadmap to what that might look like and how to get out of it. But there's challenges that come in the start of every program, and we've not done a good enough job of handling some of those all the way around, and we have to find a way to do those better. I struggle to compare, years and teams, certainly, but there's some similarities to the two for sure.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday. Hey, does this remind you of the 2019 Bengals? Well, every job, it's hard at the beginning when you start it and blah, 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 and everything else. Let me just say this. I think it's right for him to say, hey, I don't want to compare this situation to that situation, but it's always hard to install the new program and get everybody. I think it's a good thing to say because in Cincinnati, they were the worst team in the league right away. Then they were drafting Joe Burrow. As it looks right now, there's not a Joe Burrow to be had. Then they weren't very good in year 2 with Joe Burrow at quarterback, which allowed them to draft Jamar Chase. I can promise you, if they're not good in year 1 and they're not good in year 2, they ain't getting to year 3. The question is, does this hierarchy, Brinker and Carthon, get a year 3? And I think the answer there should be no. Which takes me to Brian Callahan. I am completely out on Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker. I don't even know what they do well other than sell snake oil. And they haven't even sold it to me effectively well, but I guess they've sold it to some of you and the owner, so give them some credit. But then that leads us to ask, what about Brian Callahan? Because somebody in the text line said, I don't think Callahan deserves to be fired. And some people say, this time last year, I said, hey, they got to clean house at the end of the year. This Vrabel Carthon thing, it's not working. And so let's just start over and bring in an experienced football guy to run the team. And everyone said, that's not fair for a first-year GM. And I got called racist. And I know I'm not racist, so it doesn't bother me. But again, this is life in the NFL. And so when it comes to Callahan, if I owned the team and I let these guys go at the end of the year, I could be convinced to keep Brian Callahan on as coach. But that's if the guy that I hired to run the team wants to keep him. And that's only if the guy that wants to run the team wants to keep him. What I learned from the Vrabel thing was if they were going to keep Mike Vrabel as coach, even though I would have never put Mike Vrabel in charge of personnel, because Mike Vrabel has no experience being in charge of personnel. But if you are convinced that Mike Vrabel is the man to run your team or to lead your organization as its head coach, and you wanted to fire his general manager, then what they should have done is put Vrabel in charge. What they should have done is they should have made Ryan Cowden the general manager who answers to Vrabel, which is what Vrabel wanted to do. I don't think you would have won a ton of football games doing that, but that's better than hiring a GM and saying, you two will work together and you will like it. You can't do that in the NFL. So, again, when it comes to Brian Callahan, I'm not sitting here. I'm not calling for Brian Callahan to be fired. I'm not saying he's doing such a bad job that he's got to go. But I am saying that if I hire a new GM, and again, I use the term GM as in the Chief Football Operations Officer, the final decision maker, not the way the Titans use it, but the way I use it. If I'm hiring a GM to run my football team, he gets to pick the coach. That is not the same as saying that the coach needs to be fired. So let's say I hired Thomas Dimitrov, the former Falcons general manager, and I'd say, okay, Thomas, you're running the football operation. I would tell him on the front end, it's his choice what we do with the coach. Do you want Brian Callahan to be the coach or not? Because there's a chance that an experienced football guy could look at the team and say, hey, we need stability with the coach in here. We need this system's fine. I sat down with Callahan. I think there's something there. Like, we can do this. Let's keep him. And I'm not pushing him to keep Brian Callahan. But if he thinks Brian Callahan can be his guy, then I'll do it. But if Thomas Dimitrov or Mark Dominic or Rick Spielman or Pete Carroll looks at me and says, I'm not, this isn't my kind of guy, then I'm not going to tie him to the coach. And quite frankly, if we're being honest here, and I like Brian Callahan, he's a good man, but he hasn't done anything that would inspire confidence that he's going to be a great coach. Sure, there's always the story of this guy started off poorly and he turned it around. Let's give him time. Sure, there's that. But as far as actually watching the game on Sunday and thinking that there's something there, it's hard for me to see that. I saw somebody on Twitter say, if you watch the play design on the film, you'll see Brian Callahan is cooking up great stuff. Well, that's great. But he doesn't even know how to manage his timeouts in the first half. So I see that as kind of a red flag. So again, people are going to hear, hey, clean house. They're going to say, you just got to fire everybody all the time. But that's not true. Because I didn't want Mike Mularkey to get fired when he got fired. Because I looked at what Mike Mularkey had done as the head coach of the Titans, and I said, you know what I like? I like the fact that he wins. And the guys before him didn't win. And so when I get guys in here that lose, I'm not going to sit there and say, man, remember when they used to have a coach that would win? I didn't like it when John Robinson got fired. Didn't call for that. I did call for Mike Vrabel to be fired, but I called for Mike Vrabel to be fired as the organization truly turned the page and started over. But they didn't. They promoted Rand Carthon or demoted him, depending on what he actually does, and they went out and hired him a coach. And again, the whole plan was you have to work with Will Levis. I don't believe in that. The football guy gets to pick what we're doing. If the football guy says, hey, Brian Callahan's a good coach, I can work with it, good. If the football guy comes in and says, Will Levis actually has talent, I think he could be our quarterback, you probably need to convince me and show your work a little bit more. But again, it's your call. You're the football guy. But when it comes to this, we got to give everybody time, or this is not Jared Stillman calling for Brian Callahan to be fired. This is Jared Stillman calling for the Titans to get on the same page. And I think there's a difference there. 615-737-1025 on this program if you want to weigh in. So Robbie and Joe, they had a Rand Carthon discussion this morning, and I could not stop laughing at Joe and Robbie and the wishy-washy, 1 foot in, 1 foot. Again, I love it. I love it. Because everybody's afraid. We'll get to it next. Stillman and company here on the program, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I know this is not about great guys in this league, right?
Sure.
You want winners, and Rand has the ability to win. He knows football. Give him, I would say, do give him a second chance.
Rand is a tremendous person, as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league. And we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role.
I love the moves that they've made. Rand Carthon, second year as the general manager. I thought last year getting Peter Skronsky in the first round out of Northwestern and playing him at guard right away. I think it's a terrific move, and he's going to be even that much better this year.
He's just going to play the role of a bully and run over, I believe that's Skronsky. He's just going to run right over him.
When you talk about those pieces, let's give Rand Carthon and GM a shout out because he's kind of transformed this roster from last year to this year. They got talent everywhere on this roster, so you got to give Rand Carthon a huge shout out.
And Calvin Ridley just unable to squeeze it for Tennessee.
But we literally checked every single box, from what we felt like we needed in starters to the furthest back of them.
Malik Willis into the end zone in Tennessee to pace the Packers to the early lead.
But I just feel like I said earlier, I feel like they're going in a different direction.
And now it's Henry time. Derrick cutting it outside. Derrick Henry, touchdown, Ravens.
I do know we have the right GM. Rand Carthon's going to do some great things. He and Brian Callahan just kind of getting this team together. There's a lot of excitement around it. Hope is a powerful thing. We're hopeful that the fan base sees that.
The exclamation point for Buffalo.
Gotta give him a chance. Gotta give him a second chance. And now they're 1-5. And I mean, it is what it is. So this morning I was listening to Robbie and Rexroad, and I was laughing out loud. First of all, I was thankful that they took some time out of the day to stop talking about the UT Alabama game so that they could talk about the Titans. But I was laughing out loud because the conversation on Robbie and Rexroad today wasn't should the Titans. They had Gentry Estes on. They asked him. They say, Joe says he thinks there's a 2% chance Amy Adams-Strunk will fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker at the end of the year, even though they, again, haven't done anything right. But he thinks there's a 2% chance. Robbie thinks 25% just because Amy fires people, and we know that. And Gentry Estes said that, he kind of is more in line with Robbie than he is with Paul or Joe. And I laughed because I'm listening to their conversation that followed, and they're missing the real discussion that should be had by the local punditry. Not, will Amy do it? Because nobody knows if Amy's going to do it or not. I have no idea. What's Amy going to? I don't know. I have no idea. Though I was right when they said that Vrabel was safe, and I said, well, they lie all the time anyways. So that is just based off past history. But again, they kept talking about, will they do it? Will they do it? Will they do it? That's not the question. The question is, should they do it? And I feel like people don't want to really answer that. This was Joe talking about, by the way, he said on Jared versus Joe last week that he would take John Robinson over Rand Carthon, but then gave an explanation for why they shouldn't fire Rand Carthon. And he has said that I took him out of context, which I'm not exactly sure how I did, but here was his reasoning for why he doesn't think Amy will fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, but again, not going to say whether she should or shouldn't.
Argued on Jared versus Joe last week, Stilly, of course, mangles my words and lies and says I say she won't do it because she shouldn't do it because it looks bad. That's not at all what I said. I think she might not do it because of that, but also I think she might not do it because what I would hope from Amy Adams-Strunk is that amid, these sweeping changes and all the things she's done, as she sits down with Mike Keith and talks about all the reason to be excited for the future and all this, that during the process, both of hiring Rand and then, of course, Rand bringing in Chad Brinker, but then also the process of hiring Brian Callahan, that she did her homework and that she was heavily involved in all the discussions and that she believes in what they told her and that she knows what they're doing on a daily basis and that she believes in the process. And if not, that's really bad ownership. If so, then I don't think a 1-5 start for a team that no one picked to make the playoffs, largely because the quarterback has been disappointing, is some fireable offense.
Okay. So Joe's saying that, hey, I mean, Amy shouldn't fire Rand Carthon because she should have known that they were doing a good job, because she should have done her research and hired these guys for the right reasons and not because they sold her snake oil and now she's realized it. Like, brother, the games are on Sunday. We all watch. They're not doing a good job. If Amy has hope that it can get better, it's not based off of any reality. It's based off of Chad Brinker telling her, hope is a powerful thing, Miss Amy. Hey, we spent $25 million on a wide receiver who can't catch and who's already called out the coaching. But we hope, which is a powerful thing, that it'll get better. And then Robbie was talking about how, well, you know, if it gets bad, as if it's not already rock bottom now, they lost at home to Malik. That then, you know, hey, nothing's off the table, but go ahead and play the cut.
How much did she believe that the quarterback was going to take them to new heights this year? And how responsible is a Chad Brinker or a Rand Carthon for that? You know, they hired Brian Callahan, yes, because he's a good coach, and yes, because he was going to get a job, and he was a hot name on a lot of lists, but they hired him to come in here and develop the quarterback. And if you get through an entire season and the quarterback's not being developed, as a matter of fact, you can make an argument he's regressing. I don't even know if it's an argument. He is regressing. And you end up 2-15 or 3-14, which, by the way, I think is very much on the table for this team. Then I think that changes the equation at the end of the year as to how you look at this thing. Again, I'm not saying you absolutely fire them at the end of the year, but I do think it calls into question, all right, you guys were responsible for, in many ways, turning over this roster. There's a lot of change heading into this year. You do have a new head coach. We've talked about this quarterback. Can I really trust you to go get the next guy? And that's more of a Carthon Brinker conversation. Like, I don't think Callahan is going to be in any danger of losing his job after 1 year.
Okay. Again, I think that Callahan should be tied to what the next GM wants to do if you fire these guys. But again, it's like, well, if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens, then it should be on the table. Again, the discussion should be, should she keep him or should she not? Should she look at the last 2 years and say, this is good enough, this is going in the right direction, and I know it, so I'm going to stick with it? Or should she look at it and say, they drafted a guard with the number 1 pick, he sucks. They drafted a quarterback in the 2nd round, and he sucks. They drafted a running back that doesn't even start in the 3rd round. They spent $25 million on an injured corner who is, hate to say it, injured. They spent $12 million on another corner who's injured. They spent $25 million on a receiver who's not even happy with how many targets he's getting when he gets 8 in a game. And their backup quarterback just led them to a 24-point defeat on the road. Again, I get it. It's not fun to talk about this. Nobody wants to go on record and say it. That's why instead of having the discussion about what she should do, which everybody can have an opinion on, there's the discussion of what she will do. Because nobody knows what she will do. I don't know what she'll do. But I know what she should do. So I implore the entire media, don't talk about what she will do. Talk about what she should do if things continue in this path. And so the question I have, based off of what we've seen so far, should the Titans fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker at the end of the season if things do not get markedly better? Yes or no? It's as simple as that. But this fakakta, well, if Amy trusts them, then she should know they are good stuff. Like, are you new here, bro? And unless you trust her, future son-in-law who's in the building to make these kind of decisions, and I don't, then it's based off of what we see on Sundays. And it shouldn't be based off of anything else. 615-737-1025, and our phones are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, D. May said today if the Titans would have the same record if John Robinson would not have been fired. No damn way, Chip in Mount Juliet says, that firing triggered what followed. Let me say this. I heard the same thing he heard, and D. Mace did say that. I don't know that. I don't know what would have happened if John Robinson hadn't gotten fired. They may have lost all those games in a row. They lost to Jacksonville on Sunday at home when Jacksonville was still terrible, the Sunday after they fired Robinson on Tuesday. And I saw it coming a mile away. I guaranteed it because I was in that building and I was like, oh, this is weird. Nobody knew what was going on. The owner didn't even talk about it until Friday. It was a massive distraction. You win that game, you make the playoffs. So I think they would have won the Jacksonville game. I think they would have made the playoffs. I think it would have been hard to fire a GM who'd been to won 3 straight division titles. But what do I know? But again, I can't tell you what would have happened if somebody else would have been the general manager. I can tell you what has happened. And what has happened is they took over a 7-win team, won 6 games, fired the coach, and now they're on pace to win 3 games after they spent $200-something million. I mean, let's face it. That is what happened. I can't tell you what would have happened if this guy had been fired or if this guy wouldn't have, or I can't tell you that. Ty says, if Rand actually checked all the boxes, then Callahan is a bad coach. If Rand thinks he actually checked all the boxes and he misjudged the talent, he is a bad GM. Whichever sentiment is right, Rand is the person who needs to go. Again, I put him with Chad Brinker because I think what they're going to do, I'm getting out in front of this. Because what I think they're going to do is I think they're going to fire Rand and they're going to make Chad Brinker the guy in charge of football. And I think he is just as clueless as Rand Carthon is. But instead of having played the game, which Rand Carthon did, he's got an MBA from some school I've never heard of, but supposedly he's like Harvard. Eli says, if she fires and cleans house, that means she'll be paying 3 GMs and also 3 coaches. Well, again, Houston paid a lot of coaches. In fact, they're probably still paying a lot of coaches. The Houston Texans are probably still paying David Culley and Lovie Smith and D'Amico Ryans. But that's actually working out for them. More of your phones next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
We got John Joku on the roster too. So we're going to let those guys go, and we're going to find, something better than what we've had so far. And at the end of the day, got to find some sort of solution to it. And guys will get opportunities to do so. And, Leroy will get an opportunity potentially to fight for it. So we got guys in a roster that got to fight. And then if there's somewhere else we got to go outside of it, we go outside of it. And, that's the unfortunate part about where we're at there. And we need to find a solution at some point.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday. And Brian Callahan, I guess, keeping true to his word, the Titans 10 minutes ago signed an offensive tackle, Isaiah Prince, to the practice squad. He's a former 6th-round pick by the Dolphins in 2019. And he's played in 21 games, 6 starts, and 4 postseason starts, those with the Bengals in 2021. So you know where that comes from. He's a journeyman Scarbini backup right tackle. I think he should start on Sunday. I have no idea. I don't know anything about him other than what his bio says. He might stink. I don't know. He probably does stink. But I'd start him on Sunday. And I will tell you why I'd start him on Sunday. Because while he might stink, I know the other guys. Nicholas Petit-Frere, PT. I know Jalen Duncan stinks, although he's hurt. I know John Ojokwu stinks. He's got pencil legs. And I know Leroy Watson stinks. And the Titans think he stinks too, or else they wouldn't have benched him on Sunday. So let's see what this next guy has. Because, again, I think right tackle is a pretty important position. Tristan is up next on the Titans. Tristan, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think we need to get rid of Nicholas Petit-Frere, like John, the guy from Boise State. I think we keep him on the practice squad, he's a good practice squad player. We need to get a quarterback for next year. Like Shedeur Sanders, I do not want to see him with the Titans. Quinn Ewers is injury prone. I would like a tight end like Colin Loveland from Michigan. I would like James Pierce or somebody, a good defensive end, the upcoming draft.
You can't get all the players in the draft. Let me just say this. Thank you, Tristan. Let me say this. I want options. And if you have the number 1 pick, you have all the options. If you have the number 1 pick, you can take the best player in the draft, whether or not he's a quarterback. If you have the number 1 pick, you can trade out and you can get a massive haul, as we've seen in the past, which you did. You built your team on that. So whatever it may be, whichever way, I want the number 1 pick. There is nothing left to play for this season. I know that Brian Callahan said yesterday that this season was about getting an evaluation of Will Levis. And I saw Terry McCormick wrote an article where it was like, it is the right thing to do for the Titans to make sure that they get an evaluation of Will Levis. Let me just tell you something. They've got the evaluation. He sucks, and they know it. But they can't sit here and say, hey, we're going to be awful the whole rest of the season. So they'll just say, all right, we're going to see. We're just going to keep playing him. But he stinks, and they know it. They're not getting an evaluation. They know. But as far as what's left to play for this year, the answer is nothing. So I want the number 1 pick. And then I want the options that come with the number 1 pick. You can either take the best player who's not a quarterback. Maybe he's a guard. You can take the best player. You can trade out of the pick and get a bunch of picks. And then that's how you build with young players. Or you can take the best quarterback ahead of anybody else. One texter says, I don't even want Amy to own the team anymore. Okay, well, hate to break it to you, but that's not going to change. And I'm only here to talk about the things that are possible of changing. Like I'd like to be a gazillionaire, but that's not going to change. So I'm not going to sit there and dwell on it. That's, again, reality. Josh says, 3 years of missed hits on the drafts have finally caught up to the Titans. First of all, I'd argue that they caught up to the Titans in 2022 when they started to lose. Last year, they certainly had problems because they didn't have a first-round pick in 2020 or 2021 that was any good. Let me tell you this right now. It's possible to overcome busted draft picks. It's not ideal, but it is possible. It is legitimate. You can do it. The Washington Commanders drafted Chase Young in 2020 with the number 2 pick. He's not even on their team anymore. They drafted Jamin Davis, I believe 19th in the 2021 draft, he stinks. And they drafted Jahan Dotson, number 17, in 2022. He's on the Eagles. Doesn't mean Washington's not allowed to be good. Well, Jared, they drafted Jaden Daniels. Right. But they also cleaned house and have started over with a GM who was allowed to pick his coach, with a coach who was allowed to pick his offensive coordinator, with a GM, a coach, and a coordinator that were allowed to pick their quarterback. Those things matter. The quarterback your guys picked is Will Levis. And you can debate that, but those are the facts. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Again, that's 615-737-1025. So, I got to be honest. I watched Derrick Henry yesterday dominate for Baltimore. Was not surprised. But I am a little surprised and maybe even a little disappointed at some of the reaction. Explain. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, Bridgestone Arena, where Barry Trotz will be here with us in an hour. And we got a lot to talk about with him. Trevor Matich will join us as well in 30 minutes, which we're also excited about. But I want you guys to know about a spot in my life where I'm actually working on some personal growth. I don't know how people feel about me or think about me, or I know it differs person to person, and I accept that. So I don't know if you guys know that I am really hard on myself. So hard on myself that, quite frankly, it's actually something that I need to work on. And one thing I'm trying really hard to work on right now is letting go of regrets about my past when I didn't know better. You know, how many of you have thought back to, man, when I was 20 years old, I wish I knew what I know now? How many of you feel that way? I'm sure a lot of you guys feel that way. How many of you guys think like, if I had known that this person would have reacted this way, then I wouldn't have done that? But there are a lot of things that you didn't know when you were 20 years old, and I didn't know when I was 20 years old because I was 20. It reminds me of something that the late, great Floyd Reese used to always talk about. Fans on the show would get so mad. Oh, my God. Every time he said, if I go back and look at the fact that talking about what Floyd said, drafted Kevin Dyson over Randy Moss, I don't regret that. Even though Randy Moss is a first ballot Hall of Famer and Kevin Dyson is now a doctor. And he said the reason he didn't regret it was because Randy Moss had serious character issues coming out of Marshall. And that Kevin Dyson was a player they really liked, drafted, was a good player, and then got hurt. How could they have known that was going to happen? His logic was, we did what our process had trained us to do. And I actually have respect for that. Because it'd be really easy to say, well, I should have taken the other guy because I appreciate you taking me back to then and why you made that choice. But in sports, a lot of fans can't sit there and say, well, hold on. At that point in time, it was different in the context and why they chose and why. And I get it. This didn't work, so you stink. That's sports. And so Titans fans have convinced themselves that the worst thing that ever happened to them ever was the A.J. Brown trade. That's the worst thing that has ever happened, period. Every day we get how could they have traded A.J. Brown? And while ultimately I feel now that I know more of the story that they got played by A.J.'s agent, Tory Dandy at CAA, at least I understood when they made the trade. There were probably half the Titan fans that thought it was the stupidest thing they'd ever seen, but there were half Titan fans that thought that, hey, this kind of move actually made some sense. They wanted to be a Patriots organization where no one's crying is bigger than the team. They had concerns about AJ's knees. And by the way, AJ's knees have been a problem. AJ missed the playoffs last year because of his knees. They didn't like AJ's Twitter fingers and some of the things he was saying where he would put himself ahead of the team, which, by the way, has been a concern in Philadelphia. And they were saving $100 million to draft a player who they thought was similar of that to AJ. I get it. In fact, I understood the rationale and was not against it when it happened. It's been a disaster. Make no mistake about it. And it's the kind of decision that gets you fired, which I'm fine with. But again, every day I hear about how trading AJ Brown is the worst thing that ever happened. Did anybody watch Derrick Henry last night on Monday Night Football? Derrick Henry is on pace for 2,120 yards this season, which would set an NFL record in a Ravens uniform. And yet, I don't hear people complaining about that. Certainly not to the degree that they complained about A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown trade. It's the worst thing they ever did. I can't believe it. Letting Derrick Henry walk in free agency to discover that he is still, in fact, the same Derrick Henry he was when he ran for 2,000 yards on your team Well, it happens. What? To me, Derrick Henry and what he's done for the Ravens, that's A.J. Brown 2.0. But the reaction is totally different. And this morning, after watching Derrick Henry dominate on Monday Night Football last night, I asked myself, I said, how can A.J. Brown be the worst thing that ever happened to this organization? And Derrick Henry, who, again, left for nothing, and who, no matter what anybody tells you, didn't have final say on whether or not he got to leave. How is that not also a humongous disaster on the organization's hands? And I'm going to tell you what I think it is. What I think it is I think that when A.J. Brown got traded and the team subsequently wasn't as good. Now, remember, they were 7-3. When they went on the road to Green Bay and they beat the Packers on Thursday night, and Treylon Burks had a game against the Packers, there wasn't as much complaining about A.J. Brown. It was when A.J. Brown spanked the goalpost that all of a sudden there started being a lot of complaining about A.J. Brown. But at that point in time, the Titans had how many winning seasons in a row? 6, 9-7 in 2016, 9-7 in 2017, 9-7 in 2018, 9-7 in 2019, and I believe 11-5 in 2020. 12-5 in 2021. 6 straight winning seasons, and they were on pace for number 7. At that point in time, this fan base had become conditioned to winning. This team was the reigning number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs. They had won back-to-back division titles. They had been to the playoffs in 4 out of the last 5 years. And they were headed to a 3rd straight division title. We used to talk all the time. They went on the road to Kansas City on Sunday Night Football and lost in overtime with Malik Willis as the starting quarterback. And people were upset about the A.J. Brown trade then because they thought, my God, if we had A.J. Brown on this team, we would have beaten Kansas City, Jared. They lost to Cincinnati by 4 points. Well, if we had A.J. Brown, we would have beaten Cincinnati, Jared. Again, the expectation then was to win. So why is it okay that Derrick Henry has gone to the Ravens and Derrick Henry has turned back into the same Derrick Henry that was the AP Offensive Player of the Year, the same Derrick Henry that ran for 2,000 yards, the same Derrick Henry that single-handedly won you the AFC South in half of a season, the same Derrick Henry that you called the king? Why is that okay? And the answer is because now you're conditioned to losing. That's why. Now when the Titans lose and there are players on other teams that used to be on your team that are winning, the thought is, well, Derrick wouldn't have run this well behind your offensive line. Not, you should have kept Derrick Henry and gotten a better offensive line. Well, Derrick Henry didn't want to be here. Really? Because when Derrick Henry went on Bussin' with the Boys at the end of the season, after he had his exit meeting with Ran Carthon, he said, the Titans are going in a different direction. You know who didn't want to be here? A.J. Brown, who demanded a trade. To me, these are the same. Instances where management thought, we can do better, only to find out that you're trading the kind of player away that you don't trade away. Letting a guy walk in free agency that you don't let walk away. To me, it's the same. But the reaction is completely different. Because one move came when Titans fans were entitled to winning because they were used to it. Now, this move has come when we're all used to losing. That's the only difference. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. And I think a lot of people want to weigh in on this. We'll get to some of your phones on this. I do have a take I want to get into on the Vols. I got the Vol Alabama game. Everybody watched on Saturday. And I've got a very strong opinion that I want to get out, and then I want to test it on Trevor, and we'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Tell you where we are right now. We are at the point where I say legend is next.
What's going on, my black hat brother? Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
We wasn't dead during Mike Shula. We wasn't dead during Mike DeBose, and we ain't dead now. We just sleeping a little bit. We just sleeping a little bit. We taking a nap, Paul. We taking a nap. We taking a nap. Yeah, we ain't dead. Hell no, we ain't dead. We ain't dead at all. I'm tell you for real. But Paul, I'm not happy with this bunch, man. I'm not happy. I'm not happy with fans. I'm not happy with my football team. I'm not happy with my coach. Man, I'm just not happy. I'm not having a good sports year, man. But you nailed it, Paul. You said something that everybody needs to hear. People with good common sense, and I consider myself one of them people, we know the difference between sports and reality. We don't wish nobody no harm. We don't want to see nobody hurt. Most of us don't want to see no trees poisoned. We understand this is an escape from reality. And I agree with Jim. Trey, you need to sit your ass down and shut up.
That was apparently some guy named Legend who calls into the Paul Feinbaum show. And I got to say this, like, I get it. Like at Barstool Sports, you know, all the bro. That stuff's not really for me, but I get that there's an audience for that. The Paul Feinbaum show, man, I do not even know what to make of that show sometimes. And like why people watch it. And I'm not trying to knock the Paul Feinbaum show, but apparently that's the vibe in Alabama land after Saturday. So can I just say that Saturday's game, Tennessee won. They stormed the field, which I thought was weak as hell, by the way. But they stormed the field. They puffed their cigars. We beat Alabama. How about them Vols, baby? I'm fine with all that. Other than the storming the field, which I thought was a little over the top. I'm fine with that. It's a rivalry win. Rivalry wins are sweet no matter how bad your rival is, whatever. But as somebody that, again, I would consider myself a neutral observer. I know I grew up rooting against the Vols, but I don't really care that much if the Vols win or lose right now anyway. As a neutral observer, can I tell you that I didn't walk away from that game on Saturday night thinking, wow, way to go, Vols. They beat Alabama. I walked away saying, what has happened to Alabama? What has happened to the Crimson Tide? Because the Crimson Tide stink. Like, they stink. I don't even care. I don't even know what they're ranked. I don't even care. 14th, 16th, whatever. That is not a playoff team. Alabama can't block on the offensive line. They don't get enough pressure on the defensive line. The quarterback, I kept waiting. This guy's supposed to be a first-round pick. I kept waiting for Jalen Milroe to make some kind of big game-changing play. Nothing. They're undisciplined, which, again, we're talking about Alabama here. And quite frankly, I didn't think either team played a very good game. I didn't think either team played a good game. Like, I didn't walk away from that thinking, the Vols have arrived. And in 2022, when they beat Alabama, and they beat Nick Saban, but when they beat Alabama in 2022, that felt like a watershed breakthrough moment where you knew they had the coach, you knew they had the quarterback, you knew that they beat Alabama. Trademark at the end of Alabama. This felt like they beat the Walmart knockoff version of Alabama. This felt like they beat a team that was just wearing red and white jerseys and pretending that they were Alabama because we don't have the rights to say that they're Alabama. And so, again, I'd like to think I'm a neutral observer. And a rivalry win is a rivalry win, and I'm not going to take anything away from that. But it wasn't a special win. It didn't feel like a special win to me. It felt like they beat an Alabama team that's not very good. You know, LSU has had their moments over the last handful of years. They had the best team I've ever seen in 2019. They had a terrible team in 2020. And with Brian Kelly, they've had teams that are good but not great. When you beat LSU, you know if you're beating an elite LSU team or if you're beating an okay, good but not great LSU team, or if you're Mississippi State beating a bad LSU team. You know, like, yeah, well, that LSU team wasn't very good. We don't feel that way about Alabama because over the last 15 years, Alabama has been so good. But Tennessee beat a Mike DeBoe's Alabama team. They beat a Mike Shula Alabama team. They did not feel like that game did not feel like a watershed breakthrough moment, which takes me back to them storming the field. I thought that was lame as hell. I get Vanderbilt storming the field when they beat number 1 Alabama, but no disrespect, they're also Vandy. I get Tennessee storming the field in 2022 with that elite Alabama team, with that elite Alabama brand, with that elite Alabama coach, with that elite Alabama quarterback. I get that. But storming the field when you beat Alabama, who's really on the same plane you are, I thought that was kind of weak. And what I think is hilarious, and again, I'm not one of these guys that wants to sit there and say, well, if this hadn't happened, and if that hadn't happened, if UT had lost, which I thought the referees were totally in the bag for UT, good for them. Alabama's gotten enough calls over the years. But if Tennessee had lost, the entire narrative would be about how Nico's not good enough. Because Nico wasn't good enough on Saturday. Not for what they're paying him, not for what the expectations were, not if you want to win the national title. He wasn't good enough. Not if you want to make the playoffs. You ain't going to Georgia and beating that Georgia team that we saw beat Texas on Saturday. You're not beating them with Nico playing the way he's played the last 3 weeks. And really the way he's played this season. But my main takeaway wasn't about UT. My main takeaway was about Alabama. It's a new day, baby. And I don't know how Kalen DeBoer won all these games at Washington and Fresno State and the NAIA. You know, his record's like 109-14. Guy never loses. And yet he goes for it on 4th and 22 with 3 timeouts left. Would you think you were going to get it on 4th and 22? I mean, so I am so underwhelmed by Kalen DeBoer and so underwhelmed by Alabama that I'm not saying Tennessee's bad. Tennessee is right there with everybody else in the SEC who's not Georgia, I think. Like, they're right there with Missouri. They're right there with A&M. They're right there with – it wouldn't surprise me. I know this because it wouldn't surprise me if Vandy beats them because Nico's struggling. And right now, Diego's not. But, like, I knew that 2022 Vols team was special when they beat Alabama. And I don't think that this Tennessee team is special, even though they beat Alabama. Celebrate the rivalry win for what it is. Smoke your cigar. But it wasn't, to me, a storm the field worthy victory. Gunner says, if Tennessee is what they think they are, it's embarrassing they rush the field. You won't see Kentucky basketball doing that. You won't see Alabama doing that. Imagine Rupp Arena getting stormed because Kentucky beats Arkansas this year. No court storming. Well, I don't think Tennessee thinks they're Kentucky basketball. But if Tennessee, again, like at Louisville, for instance, we don't storm the court. That doesn't happen. Why? Because, again, now we've been terrible over the last couple of years, but we expect to win big games. And there's not a team that we could beat that it would be some watershed moment, which is what I think you do when you storm the field, is when it's a watershed moment victory. One texter says, I'm a huge Alabama fan, and I 100% agree. Jalen Milroe is terrible, and the coaching was awful as well. I don't know what's Kalen DeBoer. He's not going to survive. You know, that South Carolina game for me, that was confirmation. He's not going to make it at Alabama. One texter says, Tennessee's defense is championship caliber. We'll see against Georgia, against Carson Beck and those guys, but Tennessee's defense is good. But again, like, do you think you're going to beat Oregon? Like in a playoff game? Do you think you're going to beat Oregon with Nico scoring 10 points? And I don't think you're going to. Trevor joins us next. His reaction to Tennessee's victory. I bet it's a little bit more peachy than mine, but who knows? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, Trevor Matich joins us as he always does at 4:30 on a Tuesday, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, first of all, looking good on TV this weekend. Let's start there. And number
Thank you,
two,
man. It's been tremendous fun. There's been so much going on in the college season.
So then that's where I want to start. I want to start with Tennessee's win at home against Alabama on Saturday. Look, rivalry wins are rivalry wins, and puff your cigars and do whatever. My takeaway from the game, I think Alabama kind of stinks. Like, they're not coached well. They don't do anything on offense. The defense, they don't get a pass rush the way they used to. I mean, Tennessee, Nico, I just felt like they were trudging through the mud for most of that game, got one or two big plays, and all of a sudden they ended up winning the game and feeling like they beat Alabama. But my takeaway is Alabama's not so special anymore, Trev.
Well, Alabama hasn't been special for the last little while. You're right about that, but I don't mind Tennessee being excited about it, because how often do they get to beat Alabama? I mean, they've done it, but it's a huge rivalry and it's a big deal. And I think it's great that they get excited about it. It's college football, and, just have fun, celebrate. It's great. But you're right about Alabama. They are up and down on offense, and they are up, down, 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 up a little, down, down on defense. And it kind of makes me nauseous to watch Alabama on tape, to be honest with you, because of how many missed assignments they have, mental errors, and lack of personal discipline. It's one thing to get beat on a tackle, right? But they miss tackles because of poor technique or bad angles. It's one thing to give up a big play because the other team is really good if you're on defense, but it's another thing to have repeated busted assignments and give the other side those big plays, gift wrapped. And what's worse is, in addition to what's been happening to Alabama between the whistles, what happens after the whistles is worse, because you've got guys that are losing their composure, which is not something that we're accustomed to seeing from Alabama. I mean, go back to the Vandy game. At the end of that game, one of their team captains on defense got frustrated, kicked the football, got flagged for a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, totally lost his composure, made a stupid choice. And then at the end of the Tennessee game, Bama was trying desperately to come back. I mean, they're only down a touchdown. They could tie it. They had a 3rd and 7, ball was incomplete. The defender on the intended receiver started jawing at the intended receiver after the whistle. The receiver was starting to walk back towards the huddle. The receiver turned around and punched the defender in the face right in front of the official. Punched him in the face. It wasn't the continuation of a play. It was a decision to respond to whatever that guy was saying. And those are the kinds of things that are really the cherry on top of Alabama not being able to control themselves and stay focused. Now, do I blame this on Kalen DeBoer? Well, everything's his credit and his fault that happens on the team. But I will say this, that he's been successful everywhere he's gone. He knows how to coach discipline with his players. I think it's more that these players of Alabama, most of them, are used to having the iron hand of Nick Saban imposing discipline from the outside. Now that DeBoer has lifted that a little bit and given them some trust to set their own boundaries and stay within those boundaries with a little self-control, some of the guys haven't been able to do it. And it's showing up on the field with busted assignments and mental errors, and it's showing up after plays with unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that are now multiple in this season. So you are right to say that Alabama is going through a really tough struggle right now. At the same time, they're still very talented, and Tennessee should celebrate this win.
Trevor, I think the Vols are total pretenders. I mean, the Arkansas game, they didn't do anything on offense, but they were on the road, and it was a tough game, and it was fine, whatever. The Florida game, they didn't do enough on offense. Florida's not good. Now, I did see what Florida did to Kentucky on Saturday, so I give them credit. But Florida's not good. And Tennessee should have blown them out, and they won in overtime. And this week, again, it was a trudge on offense. This ain't Hendon Hooker's offense right here. Nico, in my opinion, is a disappointment. I don't care that they won. I do not think they can compete if they were to make the playoff or even to get in, because they'll have to beat Georgia and then they'll play in the SEC title. Like, I don't even know if they can get in with Nico at quarterback. I think they're pretenders, even though they won on Saturday.
Well, strangely enough, Nico has a lot to prove, doesn't he? It didn't seem like he did in the first few games of the season. He was lighting everybody up with all those deep passes, and it seemed like that he would just continue on the Hendon Hooker legacy of running the offense fast when the coach calls up tempo moments, and they don't do it every time. They do it sometimes, and then connecting down the field. But then he went through that tough spot, and it started with the Oklahoma game. I mean, 3 straight games where and a half against Alabama, where Nico struggled to connect with open receivers down the field. And it's not just the guys were covered all the time. It's that Nico just missed them in ways that he wasn't earlier in the season. I'm not talking also about, throws that had to be perfect to be complete. We're talking guys that were open down the field. He missed some of those in the first half against Alabama as well. But that's where the struggles came from. In the games, the 3 games prior to this, including the loss to Arkansas, the reason that they were not able to move the ball and score touchdowns, they only scored 2 touchdowns in regulation against Oklahoma and against Arkansas and against Florida. The reason they were only able to score 2 was because they weren't able to connect down the field. And when they were getting big plays, they weren't finishing drives. In this game against Alabama, I mean, they ran for over 200 yards. They averaged 5 yards per carry. That's really good. But they threw for under 200 yards again. That's bad for this team. And so what happened, the difference in the first half to the second half, because Tennessee didn't score in the first half. I mean, they were down 7-0 at halftime. It looked really miserable. The difference was that in the first half, Nico missed open guys running vertically. At least one of them was for an easy touchdown, and he just overthrew the guy. In the second half, he started to hit those plays. And he had a couple of long passes, including a long touchdown pass, relatively long. And when he started to hit the vertical passes, the running game started to crank up as well, because now Alabama had to worry about that. And they got rolling again. The question is, who is Nico? Is he the guy from the first half against Alabama or the second half against Alabama? And so that's what he has to prove.
Trevor, when it comes to Tennessee and this SEC, I was stunned by the ease with which Georgia took care of Texas. But now both Georgia and Texas have 1 loss. Tennessee has 1 loss on the road at Arkansas. Missouri has 1 loss. A&M has 1 loss out of conference. They're all kind of jumbled up right there. Even Vandy has 1 SEC loss. And I'm starting to wonder, there doesn't seem to be a dominant SEC team this year. Is this just what we should expect in the SEC without Nick Saban, with the transfer portal, with NIL, or, kind of more parity like the NFL? Or is this an anomaly for where the SEC is this year?
I think it's something that we need to expect. Even though Nick Saban is not at Alabama, Kirby Smart is still at Georgia. Tennessee, Josh Heupel has had a really good run at Tennessee, and they just keep getting better, although they went through a slump. Texas is a team that is one of the best teams in the country, certainly one of the better teams in the country. And then you've got other teams that are, that are really good, really hard to beat any given week. I mean, right now, Texas A&M and LSU are the only teams that are undefeated in SEC play. They're at the top right now, and Vanderbilt is ahead of Alabama in the SEC standings, because Vandy's 2-1, Bama's 2-2. Vandy, they've lost 2 games, including that one.
And Vandy's got the tiebreaker.
Yes, they do. But here, and by the way, that's a massive deal, because getting to the SEC championship game is a big deal for a variety of reasons relative to the playoff. But when you look at, to your question, Jared, because it's a good one, what you're seeing is correct. The SEC is jumbled up, and it's because the blue bloods, the top teams, no longer seem as invincible as they've been in recent years. Georgia, Alabama, they have been teams that you could point to and hope you could beat them if somehow they didn't have their A game, but you couldn't really point to a vulnerability that you could be confident you could attack and exploit. Now you can. Alabama and Georgia have multiple vulnerabilities that you can attack and exploit. Texas looked like they were world beaters, especially on defense, coming into the Georgia game, but here's the problem. They didn't face an offense with a pulse. Coming into the Georgia game, Texas was number 1 in the nation in scoring defense, and one of the top two in most passing defense stats. But here are the Power Four teams that they played. They played 3 teams from Power Four conferences. Let's look at those passing attacks. Michigan is last in the Big Ten in passing. Oklahoma is last in the SEC in passing. Mississippi State is, when they played Georgia, they were starting a freshman quarterback making his first start because of injury, and they're not a very good team. So, of course, Texas's defensive stats are phenomenal, but then they faced a real team. They got hit in the mouth. So all of a sudden, Texas, which looks so invulnerable coming into that game, warts were exposed. And that makes it super exciting to watch the race and super exciting for other teams in the SEC that before didn't seem to have a path to get past Alabama or Georgia or this year early on Texas.
I get more with Trevor on this because I am kind of fascinated about how everybody in the SEC is kind of the same, at least at the top, or at least it feels like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen in this league. And there's only so many playoff spots to go around. Trevor's with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. More continues next. 102.5 The Game. Trevor Matich is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, we got a list of teams in the SEC that are all there. It's like recruiting rankings with the SEC, where they're all there in the top 15, and they're all there, you know, with one loss each, whether it's Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, etc. A&M, LSU, again, they're all just all these one-loss teams all together, some with none in the conference, some with so on and so forth. I ask you this question. How many teams in the SEC right now do you think are playoff caliber teams? And how many do you think have a realistic chance of making it in an expanded 12-team field?
Playoff caliber is relative, isn't it? Because it depends on who else they're competing against. And I think right now, when you compare to the top teams in other leagues, you're looking at Ohio State and Oregon with some tough outs. Penn State, put them in that group as well right now, in the Big Ten. The Big 12, you know, their champion will get in. They might not get a second one in. ACC will probably get 2 in, but every team in the ACC is exciting for reasons that are probably not comforting for their fan base. And so, you know, the SEC, I think, has a very good chance to put 4 teams in. And in the 12-team playoff, that is great. It gives you hope, because in the past, with the 4-team playoff, at this point of the season, we were probably looking at 8 teams that had a realistic chance to get in. Now we're looking at like 30 teams that have realistic chances to get in. And the more the Big Ten can cannibalize itself, the more likely it is that SEC will get more teams into the playoff down their roster.
Okay, who are the 4 teams that you think are playoff caliber teams? Or not playoff caliber. You think 4 can get in. Give me the 4 right now in order of how you think they would rank and stack in the SEC.
I think Georgia is the best team in the SEC.
Fair.
I would say Texas will make it. I think Tennessee will make it. And then I think it'll come down to Texas A&M or LSU, and they play this week. And they are undefeated in conference, but they both have some tough games coming up as well. And so I like Georgia, I like Texas, I like Tennessee to make it, and I think the winner of LSU, Texas A&M's got a very good chance to make it. I don't think Alabama makes it.
Trevor, does Vanderbilt have a shot this week hosting Texas? I mean, again, I was stunned by how easily Georgia handled Texas, though that might not be a good thing for Vanderbilt. But also, Vanderbilt has proven that they can go up against SEC teams and at least hold their own. So hosting Texas, there's going to be probably a ton of Texas fans in there this week. What are the odds that Vanderbilt can hang with them and pull it off?
They can hang with them because they can move the ball. They can do the same kinds of things to Texas that they did to Alabama. Texas's defense isn't necessarily significantly more talented than Alabama's. It was just untested coming into this Georgia game. And I think that what Pavia did, Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, in keeping drives alive, keeping them going, is something that he will need to do against Texas. And it'll be on the ground on 3rd down. It'll be, you know, it'll be scrambling around and finding a guy in a schoolyard style ad lib play to convert 3rd down and keep it going. You know, that's the kind of thing that they need to do, because if Texas's offense gets cranked up, Vanderbilt doesn't have the horses to stand up against them. But the best defense for Vandy is the same defense that beat Alabama. Remember this, that Alabama ran 45 plays against 45 plays. And the Tide scored 35 points in those 45 plays against Vanderbilt. 35 points in 45 plays. But Vandy had 75 plays in that game because Bama couldn't get Vandy off the field. And this is the same game plan for Vandy against Texas. If everything is just, let's line up our horses and run a race, then Vandy's in trouble at this point. But that's not the way this game is played. And if you've got one guy who can give the opponent fits and keeps drives alive, like Diego Pavia can do, that is the Commodore's puncher's chance.
Okay, let's say Vanderbilt wins on Saturday against Texas. I don't think they're going to win, but let's say they win. Why not? They win. Then what about Vandy?
Then Vandy will have beaten a highly ranked Alabama team. they will have beaten a highly ranked Texas team. Both of those teams I expect to finish in the top 15. Texas probably higher than that. And they, they continue to go on. I'm just looking at their schedule right now. I want to see exactly who they have to face after that because they still have Tennessee on the schedule. Yeah. So if they beat Texas, they have one conference loss against Missouri. And then they've got Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee after the Texas game. So it'll be really hard for them to finish high enough to get into the SEC championship game. Now they would need to get in as an at-large team into the back end of the playoff. Can they do that? It's hard for me to imagine that they can win 3 of the next 5 games. 4 or 5. Yeah, it's hard to imagine they can win 3 of them. They might do it. At Auburn is the most likely one. South Carolina, they get it home. But then they got to knock off either Texas or LSU or Tennessee. And if they don't do that, I think they'll be down in the rankings. But here's the hope. If they can beat Texas or LSU or Tennessee, you put that with the Bama win, as long as the tide doesn't fall completely off the map, they'll have 2 of the best wins among the teams competing for those last few spots in the playoffs. So their hope to get there, because their record is so awesome, is kind of dim. But their hope to get there, because even as a 9-3 team, if they have multiple wins over highly ranked conference opponents, then they've got a chance to get there. Now, this is the way fans should be looking at it. The way the team should be looking at it is that nothing else exists but Texas. But you can see a path for them to get there. It's a very steep path. But with Diego Pavia, every path is negotiable.
Last one for you. Trevor Matich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, your thoughts on the Titans. Go.
My thoughts on the Titans are, what a train wreck. What an absolute train wreck. You had talked about the right tackle position, Jared, and you were right about Nicholas Petit-Frere. I had watched him at Ohio State and then in his early days with the Titans, and the way he moved, I thought if he had enough time in the Titans weight room to get functional NFL strength, that he would be a functional right tackle. I was wrong. He is so far from functional, it's unbelievable. I mean, he gets walked back into the quarterback easily. He can't stop an inside move. And normally, if you are sitting back on your heels to try to stop a quick move one side or the other, you shouldn't give up quick inside moves. You should be vulnerable to the bull rush, but nothing else. Well, he's vulnerable to everything. He can't play. You were right about that, and I was wrong about that, Jared. So credit for that.
Thank you, Trevor.
Quarterback position is still.
Go ahead.
Yeah, quarterback position is still a mess. Going to Buffalo, a potential Super Bowl contender, they led at halftime, the Titans did, and then things fell completely apart in the second half. That kind of thing happens if you're not a good team. But there are some good things about this team, and there are places that they have improved the roster. It hasn't shown up in wins yet, but they're better in those places. The problem is there is such a gaping hole at right tackle, and the quarterback has been such a mistake-prone mess that the rest of the offense has not been able to really show what its talent can do. Add that to drops by receivers that are supposed to be good. And then the defense, is in trouble all the time because the offense puts them in a bad position. So this team is better than their record, but that enormous chasm at right tackle has got to get fixed. And the quarterbacks have to figure out how to not turn it over, and that's where we stand.
Trevor Matich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, great stuff, as always.
Jared.
Barry Trotz, sitting down with us, joins us next here on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, is streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Predators game day. They take on the Boston Bruins. Weird start time tonight, 7:45 on the brand new FanDuel Sports Network television channel. It's the same channel, just with different logos and hopefully a different theme song because I can't listen to that Valley Sports theme song anymore. But Barry Trotz joins us now on the program presented by Pourvu. Be ready when the puck drops in Smashville with your choice of drink in hand. Not only does Pourvu have the best selection of wine, it's a one-of-a-kind selection where you won't find it anywhere else. Let's start with this. Barry Trotz, GM of the 0-5 Nashville Predators. What happened?
Well, I don't think anybody thought we'd be 0-5. I certainly didn't. I don't think the players did, and I don't think Andrew Brunett or the fans did. I mean, it's we'll just call it what it is. It hasn't been good enough, and no one would ever thought of this start. But we've dug this hole, and we've got to dig ourselves out of it. It's plain and simple. We haven't played good enough. You look at all areas of our game. I can give you a lot of excuses or theories, but our game, we're 31st in goals against. I think we're 31st in goals for, or tied with Edmonton and Anaheim, I think, in San Jose for 32nd for goals for. Our penalty kill has been okay, and our power play has been average. But to me, it's our 5-on-5 game. That's where it is. I mean, I can go up and down the lineup and give you, I didn't, from the goal out, there's no one that's been outstanding. You could say, hey, this guy's doing everything he can. It hasn't come together as quick as we would like. I think we've got a little stale. And I have a theory, we've been, guys come in a month before, they practice and do training camp. We had a really good training camp. And then the preseason, we didn't really play against anybody. We got a game canceled, but we haven't been away from home. So it's Groundhog Day for 2 months for our guys. And what happens being in a city like Nashville is your friends, your family, everybody looks at the schedule and goes, man, I'm going to come and see you for a week because you got 3 home games. And all of a sudden, you're an older team, you've got 2 or 3 kids, you got family members and friends coming in, and your focus is not there. To me, our focus is not fully on winning hockey games. And it's very similar to what it was a little bit after the All-Star break. So we've got to get it together. There's no one, you can't blame anybody but us. Blame me, blame coaching staff, blame the players. We have not won, and that's what we're paid to do, and we haven't done it. So I don't have any where to run or hide and try to make excuses. We haven't been good enough. We could have, should have, maybe got some points in some of the games, probably deserved. I mean, we're leading the team or leading the league in shots for, but we're not getting inner slot stuff. We're sort of perimeter. We're not getting dirty. We're playing a little bit too kind. I think our confidence is way because we haven't won. How many times have, we got off to maybe a good start, get a lead, score a goal, and then before they can announce our goal, we give it right back to them. So we have done nothing to, from momentum wise to jump up and down and say, hey, we're right there. Until the players get to a point right here, and they're the ones that have to do it on the ice. Coaching staff have to put the right people on the ice, and myself and Andrew and everybody, we've got to try to send the right message all the time. Because this is our team, and we're in a salary cap world, and it's really hard to move people, and especially with no move contracts throughout the league. There's not a lot of movement, and it's early in the season, but it's getting late early here for us.
So with that in mind, what do you make of the fact that since 1995, no team has started the year off 0-5 and made the playoffs?
Yeah.
Because as much as I would love to sit here and say, well, that won't happen to my team. I mean, 1995 is a long time. I was 6 years old. And that makes me very nervous about the expectations for this season, what I have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm the one that has to live with it. I try to sleep at night and I can't, because I do worry. I do know how hard it is to make the playoffs. I mean, I've been in this league a long time. I know how hard it is. And when you get a big hole, it's hard to dig out of. We dug ourselves out of a hole last year. I mean, the St. Louis Blues were last in the league, I think, at Thanksgiving, and they won the Stanley Cup. It's been done. But it just feels so daunting right now because it's the start of the year. Everybody wants that first win. We were just talking before before we went on air. It's no different than a ball player. You want that first hit for the year so that you got some kind of a batting average. Right now we're batting 0, and we get a hit here. We'll be 1.25, I believe, if we get a hit here. So it is a daunting task at the same time, but it can be done. And if we're going to do it, let's be the first. And that is the challenge I'm going to throw to the team here. Is let's go forward here and let's not be so kind and so pleasant out there. Let's get grow. You always hear me talk about. Let's make sure we got a lot of spine in our game. Let's have some spine in our game because we don't have enough of it in our game. Our fourth line can go up and down. It has had lots of spine for us. Are -8, -7, at even strength. I mean, that's not good enough. Come on. Our top guys, haven't produced yet. I get there's a transitional period, but even some of those guys are hiding behind the stars. Let's call it what it is. There's obviously Stamkos, Marchessault, and Shea are the big signings, and we still have Roman, we still have Forsberg, and we still have Yossi and all that. They're all capable of leading this team and being the front runners. And then the secondary guys, be it the Tommy Novaks and Jankowskis and people like that, Evangelistas, they've got more in their game. So it's on everybody. And collectively, there's more than enough talent to get ourselves back in the game here and string some wins together. But it doesn't happen unless everybody's committed. And we're just right now we're conveniently out of the way. We're conveniently not getting to the front of the net. We're conveniently just short. So enough from my standpoint. I'm not a happy camper sitting up there and we added 84 goals to our forwards this year and we're one of the lowest scoring teams. I don't want us to score 6 goals a game. I'd love us to, but let's take care of our defensive game so we're in the game. Let's make sure that after we score a goal, we don't give it right back before they announce our goal. I mean, those are things that are very, very, say, mindset centric, if you will. If you have the mindset, and we have those guys that have been multiple winners, they can do that. So you can tell that I'm not really happy myself. And anybody who's out there is a fan of the Predators or a part of the organization, no one's happy. So they've got to get the first win, get the big hairy ape off the back that we all feel, and there's a weight right now. So you got to fight through it mentally because everybody's going to what ifs. What if we lose this game? What if we do that? You got to think forward. You got to say we're going to win this game, and then we're going to do something here. So let's spine up and let's go.
So when on Friday I looked at Saturday's game and I said, you lose Saturday, there got to be some changes. And then because it was me, I think a lot of people anticipated that I was talking about the coach. And I wasn't talking about the coach. No. But I was talking about the room. And immediately you call up Zachary Leroux. Is that enough? Because I hear what you're saying, and it sounds a lot of it, is kind of you challenging the players right now. Yeah. But you make one roster. Do you need more in the room to change it up a little bit?
You don't, it's easy to say you need more in the room, but you can't do it. In the salary cap world, you really can't do that. You're limited to what we can bring in from the minors right now. I've been on the phones, working the phones. No one's trading anybody right now. No one's. Sure. But I would like to get maybe I would try to find another centerman or something like that. No one's giving their centermans away. No one's even trading right now. No one's in a position. They're still trying to find out what they can do. So the only thing we can do is internally. And I'm hoping Zach Leroux, who is a guy that pulls people into the fight, for me to think or anybody to think that Zach Leroux is going to be the savior of the Nashville Predators, that's silly. He's playing his first National Hockey League game. But if he brings an emotional element that pulls people into the fight and we get that emotional edge and that might be something that gets us going in the right direction. I would love to do something, with our hockey team to shake someone loose or to shake the cobwebs. It's just not out there right now. There's no one moving that. Everybody's 2-3, 3-3, that type of thing. So they don't even know what they have as a hockey team. I still don't know what we have. I think we have enough talent, but you're going to need the other parts of the game for us to, to be really good. And let's start with taking care of both sides of the puck. Let's make sure that we're conveniently, working every battle. I mean, I thought we used to win every battle when it came to, for a puck battle. Right now, we are not winning as many. Is that try? Is that talent? We're not playing as fast. I get it right now because we're squeezing it. There's a lot of sawdust going down the ice right now. When you're not feeling it, execution. When you execute and you're feeling it, the passes are crisp. You can take a pass. You can give a pass. And everybody's in sync and everybody's moving and it looks quicker than it really is. Right now we're making a pass and it's not right on the tape, or we're not taking it and taking it clean, and all of a sudden it gets jammed up, and so we're sort of bogged down. So it's a combination of everything. So the best thing that I've always said, right now we look like we're stale. And you got to change the arena, if you will. Emotionally, we've got to change the arena. You've got to change the mindset. You got to trust that, right now we get a goal and we're thinking, oh, we're going to give up a goal really quick because it's happened to us so many times. You've got to fight through the negative thought that you carry around all day it's burdens. It's bad energy. So you've got to try to clear the mechanism, if you will, and have some positive energy and build on one shift. You better stay current. You better stay present every shift and not think about the what ifs. Oh, geez, if we take a penalty, they're going to score here. You can't. We took a penalty. Let's kill this penalty off, and then let's get back to 5-on-5. You got to change that mindset, and it's hard when you haven't won, and everybody's looking at each other. I'm sure, this is where leadership. This is where Roman. This is where Phillip, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marcia. And it's going to be hard for the new guys because they're trying to find their game, and for them to stand up and go, hey, we got to get this done. It's hard when you're not going really well. So I've been down there and I've seen it happen. I've never been part of a start like this before, and how I'm reacting it's a little bit foreign to me. Usually, we've had so starts and you're feels like you're never going to win, but we haven't. So it really feels that way right now.
Barry Trotz is with us on the program. You believe in the goalie more than I believed in the goalie this offseason.
Yes.
And there was a big debate in town about, and again, it's not totally fair, but we're comparing him to Pekka Rinne and saying, okay, is he good enough to be that franchise guy that Pekka was? I look at the predicament you're in now. Isn't this where the goalie needs to steal one for you?
Yeah.
Where
absolutely.
the goalie needs to put his hand in the air and say, okay, you, for instance, you personally believe in me so much that I will win us a game, that I will find a way, give me one, and I will win this game for us. And I don't feel like he's playing like that right now.
No, I can go through all 5 games. I'll go on record for that. I don't think there's one game in the first 5 that I can say we've out goaltended the other team. I feel like we've been out goaltended a little bit. Part of it is a little bit is we're not getting in the inside as much, but we need that. That's the reason those elite goalies, and I believe Saros is that he's an elite goalie. That when things are getting tough, you might get outplayed. I'm watching a couple teams right now that have got 2 and 3 wins, and I'm watching them. And I'm like, they're in their end the whole game, and they have no business winning, but they're getting points, and so everything's sort of okay until they can find their game. Right now, we're not getting that. Our save percentage is 8 and 834, I think, which is 31st in the league.
I mean, anything below 9 is bad.
Yeah.
And
so, but it's a team thing. I mean, the goalies are a big part of it, but it's got to be team centric. So I've always had teams that are goalies, and the way we played was always pretty predictable, and we always were pretty good defensively. So right now we're not there yet. We're much better than we were in that Seattle game, if that's anything. But at the same time, we're playing some pretty good teams right now. So The Edmonton game, I saw signs. We actually handled Edmonton pretty well, but McDavid took his game to another level. Even though he only got one goal, he seemed like he was dangerous all night.
Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty sick one goal.
It was.
I mean, it was a pretty McDavid-esque one goal. So the mobility of where this team was last year, where this team is this year. Again, I understand the idea of a positive mindset, and you win the day, and all of a sudden it's like the cloud evaporates. But if you guys are bad, like if this ends up not, what do you do? Because all these guys are signed, and there's no move clauses, and Stamkos is old. And if you're not winning with Stamkos and you're not winning with Marchessault, teams aren't going to trade for those guys because the stats will say that they're not good, because when you lose, the stats say you're not good. And so I ask kind of, what do you do if this plan ends up not being the right plan?
Well, I've got to stick with it. These guys were put in place for a reason, is that we need to buy time for our young guys. I will just keep inserting the young guys in this plan with the older guys, and they're gonna, as I said, these guys, the older players right now have to prop this team up for this year and next year. And I believe that we're going to have a really good base. I think we've drafted pretty well. Our Milwaukee team's really young and really good, and we've got a lot of things to do in the draft. So, the next 2 years, it's going to be on a lot of the older players to carry this team. And if they can't, then we will meet with the representatives and say, it's not working. Do you want me to see if we can do something? And we'll try to do something. But it's 5 games in. I'm hoping we can turn it around. And we're talking, doom and gloom and nuclear ready 5 games in, which you never thought you would talk about, there. But they got lots of game left. That to me, finding their game and standing behind their game is what they got to do. They still got lots of game left. They're still good players. Every one of the guys we signed in the offseason are still good players. And they're just not playing like good players right now.
I loved it when you hired Andrew Brunett. I thought Andrew Brunett did a great job last year. I think Andrew Brunett's a really good coach. I think he's a good dude. But if there's anything I've learned about hockey, and maybe not with the Nashville Predators, but maybe everywhere else, is it feels to me like the number one fire the coach sport. That is things aren't going well, fire the coach. And football's getting there because they're starting to fire the coach at the same level. Where are you on that? Not to say firing the coach today, but where are you big picture of, hey, I've got guys that have big contracts that have no movement clauses. It's easier to fire one coach than it is to fire a whole team. So where are you on the philosophy of that and looking at the coach and evaluating that as the season has started unexpectedly?
Well, I think number one, I look at it as 2 things. If you fire your coach every time your team stumbles, then you're enabling. You're not getting better. I mean, I think you have to work through things together to get, if you go through hard times together, you come out on the other side and much better. And that applies to not only the game of hockey or any sport, but it applies to life. If every time it gets hard and you want to change venues or you want to put blame on someone, then you're never going to get any better. You're never going to win anything. So I'm a big believer is that you go in there, you fix it inside, you get through those hard times together, and you become galvanized. And what it does is when you do that, it does galvanize you, and then you can do something special. When it got really tough last year, and the guys are looking for the easy way out, we held them accountable and said, listen, no, this is not happening. This is not acceptable. So, for me, that's not even a thought right now, because I think the enabling is, every time you the fans, media, all that, as soon as a team goes through a rough patch, it's so let's just fire the coach. Why don't we just work together and become better as a group? That's where I would start, and we're going to try to do that all the time. So, no matter what the result is today, we're going to work towards that. And if there was something that was unfixable, then we may go in a different route. But I don't see anything here that's unfixable.
To that point, Barry Trotz with us. Last one for you. If you win tonight, because I feel like there's a giant cloud over the entire team right now, and I felt it in the third period of the game Saturday, where I felt like I could feel the anxiety from the team, the lack of confidence more than anything else. If you win tonight and you get that, as you said, well, you say 1,000-pound gorilla, you get that gorilla off your back and you move forward. At that point, how difficult is it when it's only 6 games and you're looking at 1-5 to make up the ground that you've lost in the first?
Well, I think everybody looks at you're 1 say if we can get 1-5 hypothetically, then everybody goes, you got to go on a 5-game winning streak. You don't. My theory is it's really hard to go, okay, we got to win our next 5 and then we'll get to even, and then because you reach your goal.
I take it.
Yeah, I would take it too. But what you need to do, and I've always had this theory, is you got to think short term. You got to think the game that's in front of you, the week that's in front of you. Don't look past the week that's in front of you. And we usually play 3 games a week. If we can get 4 points every time, I don't care how we get them, we get 4 points out of every 3 games. If we were to do that for the rest of the season, we'd be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to short term, be in the moment and attack what's directly in front of you. Tonight is the Boston Bruins. It's not Chicago, Columbus. It is the Boston Bruins, and they're a good team. And they're a big team. They're a huge team. Their defense is massive. They got a third line that is dominating right now, and they're all 6'4", physical. We got to take care of the Boston Bruins tonight. And if we do that, then we'll look at Chicago. And then we take care of that. Then we'll look at Columbus. But if you just think if we're looking at, past this week, I can guarantee your record's not going to be any better.
Barry Trotz, a fired up Barry Trotz today ahead of the Bruins game tonight. Barry, great stuff as always. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Good luck tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I am just like you. I'm going through this with, I've been a Predator. I've been a Nashville guy, and trust me, I don't sleep very well at night, and I want to win a cup here before my time is done, and this is not acceptable from my standpoint. I just want to make sure that we start getting a win and start building off a win, and hopefully it starts tonight.
I'm gonna tell you this: it may not make you feel any better. I'm not that worried. I mean, I'm not happy, but I'm not. I think the team's gonna win tonight, or if they don't win tonight, then I probably get a little bit more worried. But I just think it's a long season, and I think that this team's still. I thought this team was good going in. I think this team will be good.
I think we have the possibilities, and you gotta find what you are. I always tell players, I tell teams, you got to know who you are, and every game is winnable. Every game is winnable, but you got to find a way to win that game. So, we're searching, and hopefully we find what we're looking for.
Very great stuff. We'll talk soon. Barry Trotz joining us on the program.
right now we said this a little earlier, we're just a little disconnected as a group. We're making the game a little harder than it has to be on us. We're chasing games. We're losing momentum at the wrong time. But as far as the expectations, for sure, we feel we had a lot to live up with. Probably unfair expectation, really, until we got going. And we haven't really been able to fulfill that expectation of ourselves and what the outside world thinks of us. And again, that frustration's leaked in and it's not helping us right now. So we have to kind of get back to being us a little bit. Everybody needs to have maybe the best version of themselves. I think when you go through these kind of things, you get frustrated, you get down, you try to do things on your own. And that leads to the big disconnection already that we have. So we have to find a way to pull together. And the only way you get out of these things, or the only way I know how to get out of these things is through determination and work. And I think that has to be the focus.
That was Andrew Brunett earlier today. We just had Barry Trotz on the program. And I got to say this. I didn't know what to expect. We had Barry Trotz on the show. The only thing I can control is how the questions I asked. And I pretty much got every question I cared about out there, which was, what do you make of the fact that no team makes the playoffs when they start 0-5? And Barry Trotz said, I know it. I'm not happy about it. I asked Barry Trotz about, hey, what's wrong with the team? And he basically said, hey, this team's got too many people. They're coming into Nashville. Oh, we got to take care of everybody when they show up. They really challenging the players. I mean, normally it's easy to do an interview when things are going good. Like, it's easy when things are going well to have Barry Trotz on the show. Barry, you guys have won 3 of the last 4. How's it feel? Boy, I tell you, it feels great. That's easy. Sometimes what's hard for me is when we sit down with somebody when things aren't going well. Think of a press conference. Think of when somebody sits down with you when they're not going well and they won't address the elephant in the room. They won't be honest about it. They won't sit there and they won't say, like, hey, this has been a problem. They won't say, like, oh, no, it's fine. Hey, we got great guys in there. We got veteran leaders, and I know they'll get us out of it. He wasn't saying that. Now, he did say, hey, I think we got the right guys in there, and I think but he said, it's too early to trade. So I'm going to start making moves here. I'm going to start making moves there. He said, as far as calling guys up, they've already called LaRue up. I was actually surprised. I wasn't surprised because it's Barry Trotz, but just in my experience, when it comes to talking to general managers and coaches and players when things don't go well, it's always like, how dare you tell me that we suck kind of thing. That wasn't this. And Barry saying, hey, these players, they've got to get it figured out. He made it clear, in my opinion, that he doesn't feel like his team, he doesn't feel like they're doing everything they can to win. And that he's going to try to make as many changes as possible if it continues. Here's what I think. I believe that the Predators, and I saw this in the third period last night, or Saturday afternoon, and I saw this in the Seattle game. Barry's right. They played a complete game against Edmonton, but they just lost. They lost 4-2, but it was really 3-2. They lost because Edmonton has Connor McDavid, which is going to happen. And by the way, happens every time Edmonton plays here. But more importantly, when they gave up the first goal of the Seattle game, it was like everybody put their head down and said, oh, crap. When they got down on Saturday in the third period and Detroit started to play, it was like, oh, crap. And there is a difference between getting pissed off and doing something about it and having the anxiety or the frustration of, oh, here we go again. And that's what the Predators have to solve. Now, I said this to Barry Trotz. I said, you believed in UC Saros more than I believed in UC Saros, because there was a great debate around town. The debate was on our station about the goalie. And my biggest problem with the goalie was in the playoffs, he doesn't steal games. And I need a goalie that steals games in the playoffs. Well, I know it's not the playoffs. I know it's October. They need to steal a game. They need a goalie to go out there, and it might be tonight because the Bruins are legit. They need a goalie to steal the game. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. One texter says, Barry Trotz is so straightforward, and I appreciate that. I think, the texter says, I think he's doing great. Well, right now they're 0-5. So even he, I think, would argue with you that he doesn't think he's probably doing a great job. But D-May sent in a text while Barry was on the air. And D-May said, he goes, man, I just love Barry with a bunch of exclamation points. And I am fascinated to know tomorrow on their show what exactly he means by that. Like, what was it Barry said? That Derek Mason, again, and if you, like, D-May's a good guy, you know, around here. He's always got a smile, he's always whatever. But when he played, man, well, you all remember him and Cortland Finnegan getting into it. You know, D-Mace was a confrontational player, which is not a bad thing. You know, he shows he's got some cojones. But I do wonder what it was about Barry Trotz's interview that made Derek, again, an ultimate competitor, say that. And that I am kind of fascinated by. Another texter into the text line says, did you notice that Barry Trotz called him Andrew instead of Bruno during that conversation? He even said Andrew Brunett. I didn't notice that. Ian, do we think there's some kind of secret, you know, behind him calling?
A hidden message in there?
Do we think there's something there?
No.
I don't either. You know what's crazy? Again, when things don't go well, you only have two choices. Get better, get better. But when things don't go well and then you're kind of put to it, when you have to own it and be accountable for it, when the guy gets up there and answers every question and doesn't get super defensive and doesn't throw it back on the host or doesn't get mad at the question or doesn't, it's kind of hard to sit back and try to say, okay, well, what were kind of the hidden messages in this? There weren't any hidden messages in this. He told you straight up. He thinks the players are too nice right now. He thinks the star players need to take the onus and make some plays. He is going to try to push the players. He's not going to fire the coach. Again, hockey is a sport, and football is starting to get there like hockey, but there's no sport like the NHL where it just, hey, things ain't going well, fire the coach. And some organizations do it and some don't, and I get it, and I don't even have a feeling because each individual situation is different. He's not firing the coach. So there wasn't like a hidden message to me about anything he said, which is he thinks these players are not playing tough enough. He thinks these players, when something goes wrong, are packing it in. He thinks they're getting bitter instead of getting better. Something bad happens. Where's the guy that puts his hand in the air and says, okay, I'm taking it over here? Now, the one thing I will say about that is this. There's only so long that you can say it's the players. So this is the first cards have been played. The first card was Zachary LaRue getting called up, which I thought, again, I was kind of hoping for 3 call-ups and 3 send-downs. You know, scratching, whatever, you know, and I don't even know the guys, you know, how I get about Milwaukee, you know, do that.
Well, they brought Del Gazzo too the other day. That's 2 maybe.
No.
They scratched Fabro.
I'm talking
you should
about,
be in favor
and
of
you
that.
know what? I call Fabro the Traylon Burks of the Nashville Predators, although he is more healthy than Traylon Burks, but just, you know, unrealized potential after opportunity after opportunity. It's the same old bull crap. But I was kind of thinking, like, you know, can they get a new lineup here? Like, could they get LaRue? And I know Svechkov's hurt, but that would be the other one and Weisblatt, so I'd say, okay, you guys are in. You know, but he
Just
did
a
say,
whole line of youngsters.
But he did say he is going to keep, playing that card. That was the first card. And the second card was played, which was challenging the players. Because he didn't mince words up here. He's putting it on the players. But again, you can only put it on the players for so long. So I don't know what card 3 is, and I don't know if card 3 is coming after if they lose today. But those are the first 2 cards to play. That being said, if they win tonight, I'm not that worried about it. Like, they'll be fine. It's a long season. And again, like, you know, the Adam Vingan stat about nobody making the playoffs after starting 0-5 makes me a little nervous. But at the same time, I would say that it's a long season.
The
If they win-
hole is not, they are starting to dig themselves a little bit here.
Well, we got about 6 and 7, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't think you can get out of that. Like,
And
I do think they are on
tonight
the brink here.
is not going to be an easy game.
And it is not. And that's why I looked at Saturday and I was like, man, Saturday kind of feels like the big line of demarcation.
So I think they do need a win tonight. If they don't get a win tonight and it somehow snowballs into to the week, coming up here the rest of the week, that might not be great.
Are you out on the playoffs if they lose tonight?
I mean, it's hard to say you're out on the playoffs 6 games into an 82-game season,
Laviolette got fired 6 games into an 82-game season.
Yeah. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to be completely out on the playoffs if they lose tonight, considering they don't really play well against Boston here. But not a great start.
I will say this. If they lose tonight, then my worry level will be significantly higher for whatever that's worth. So with that being said, I'm not that worried. I mean, I'm not happy, but I'm not worried because I think what will happen, I think they'll win tonight. And then I think it'll be 3 and 6. And then all of a sudden it'll be, 4 and no, it'll be 3 and 6. And then it'll be, 6 and 9. And then they'll eventually
because
catch
it's
up.
Friday at Chicago,
They'll win
Saturday home versus Columbus.
Yeah, but you're what Barry said.
Yeah.
Barry said you start thinking about Chicago and Columbus.
Yeah, you look
you'll lose
ahead
to Boston.
Exactly. So they need to win this game, and you win the next 2, which are winnable on paper, and you're 3 and 5. You're right back in it. But
615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025 the game. I love Window Nation. That's right. You know that about me, that when it comes to windows, Window Nation is my company. I love them. They take great care of me. They came out to my home and they told me what I needed and what I didn't need, which was the most important. And they can do the same for you. Right now, buy 2 windows and you'll get 2 free. Plus, you'll pay nothing for 24 months. So hurry up because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule an in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90Nation or by visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Again, buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and pay nothing for 24 months. They're the company I trust. There's a bunch of companies out there that do windows. They're the one that will take great care of you that I can promise you will do that. windownation.com. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your house seen, heard, and sold. TJ's a good man. TJAndersonHomes.com. The Predators tonight hosting the Boston Bruins. That's right. You know, normally Predators Game Day, something that's kind of fun, is when we start it and we go over the, here are the, whatever it may be. Here are the records for the two teams. Well, I know the Predators record off the top of my head. They're 0-5, and they need a win desperately. You know it is bad when Ian and I are sitting here in October saying, if they lose tonight, are they out for the playoffs? Well, the one way they can solve that is by not losing tonight. Now, maybe I'm a sheep. I could be totally in the purse, whatever you want to call it, whatever. I don't think I'm a homer, but make of it what you will. Clearly, Barry Trotz came on the show today and challenged the players. And as Adam Vingan said when it came to John Hines, and Barry Trotz talked about, hey, I got to evaluate, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And Adam said there is no way that Barry Trotz would sit there in front of the media and say that if he hadn't already said it to John Hines. Which means if he's coming on the show and he's challenging the players and he's telling the players to get focused and they're telling the players to get to the dirty areas and they're telling the players this and telling the players that, if that's the case, what that tells me is key. So again, maybe I'm a homer. I don't know. I don't think so. But at least tonight, we're going to see if that works. At least tonight, we're going to see if the insertion of Zachary LaRue into the lineup is going to make a difference. And let me say this, Tomasino and Parsonen are out. And I was going to ask Barry about Tomasino and Parsonen, and then I started to think to myself, I don't care about Tomasino and Parsonen anymore. They've gotten 55 chances, just like we say with Traylon Burks, enough is enough. So we shall see tonight. The problem is, this is a good team. Like, this is a good team the Boston Bruins are playing. This is a team that expects to win a Stanley Cup, and they want to fire the coach every single year that they don't. And I know because I listen to Boston radio. So tonight, let's see how the 5-on-5 game is. Let's see if that's better. I actually, and this is not a good thing, because tonight they're rebranding the TV channel. And by the way, puck drop is at 7:45 tonight, not 7 o'clock. But they're rebranding the TV channel. It's FanDuel Sportsnet or whatever it is. It's the same as Bally's, except now instead of red logos, it'll be blue logos. But the point I'm making is, I mean, I am excited to sit my butt down tonight and watch this game because I know they need to win. And I'm not that worried about it, but it won't take a lot, given the hole they've dug themselves, for me to be worried about. 0-6. I wondered how Barry Trotz was going to take it when I said to him, you know, what do you make of the fact that, again, I didn't make this stat up, that since 1995, no team's been 0-5 and made the playoffs, and he was well aware of it. So we can sit there and say, well, this will be the first, but I don't know if we can do that if it's 0-6 or 0-7. So they need one tonight, 7:45. The Preds official podcast is next. Then Max Hers has the pregame show. It's not the award-winning pregame show, but it is a great pregame show at 6:30 tonight. That's it for us, Stillman & Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.